We're recording.
Great. I'd like to call the meeting of the Harbor Commissioners, Harbor Board of Commissioners to order on May the 19th at 1:01 p.m. Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Chang Crawley,
Present.
Commissioner Ryring,
Present.
Commissioner Mateusz,
Present.
Commissioner Zemke,
Present.
Commissioner Lorenz.
Okay, we have a quorum here, so why don't we continue the meeting and start with item B for public comment, which I will open up to members of the public who would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda. And it looks like we may have one hand raised so far for BioAge Labs. I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can, you have 2 minutes to make your public comment now.
I'm sorry, this was Eric Jones.
Oh, hi, Eric. Okay.
Hi. Hi.
Your item is further down the agenda, so why don't, unless you want to make a public comment now on something that's not on the agenda, why
Nope.
don't we wait until you do your presentation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for being here. So I don't see any hands raised for public comment number 1 or item B. So I will close public comment and let's go to item C, which is the consent items or consent calendar. Does anyone want to pull anything off of consent? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Is there
I
a
will
second?
second that.
Okay, roll call, please. Melanie?
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz, Commissioner Chang Crawley.
Aye, so that motion carries and we will move on to the discussion items. The first item is number 9, which is board consideration of installing 2 Sea Valor ring buoy life-saving stations at Pillar Point Harbor and assisting San Mateo County and installing 2 more at Mavericks Beach. So it looks like John Moran or our general manager, Jim Pruitt, has written the staff report. So Jim, I don't know if you and John want to just take it from here or if John wants to do the presentation first.
I'll turn it over to John and let him introduce Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Hi, John.
You're on, John, for item number 9.
This is a motion to authorize staff to utilize district resources to obtain all necessary permitting and cover construction costs for installation of 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations at Pillar Point Harbor, 1 at each breakwater, and 2, lead the permitting efforts and cover costs for the installation of 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations on San Mateo County controlled property at Mavericks Beach. The district GM was approached by Sea Valor organization who proposed donating ring buoy life-saving stations to the district. District staff met with the Sea Valor representatives and identified 2 proposed locations, one at the breakwater near Surfers Beach and one at the breakwater near Mavericks. The Sea Valor organization will donate the life ring stations. The district will be required to pay for the permitting costs and professional installation in accordance with the permitting requirements. At present, we are unsure what either of those costs will be. The district will need to bring on a consultant to generate the application for a coastal development permit. And then those permitting requirements will dictate how in depth we'll have to go for the actual installation. It may not be in depth at all, so no real significant cost, just a post hole digger and some concrete and the installing the posts that are going to be supplied to us by Sea Valor. So at present, we just do not really have any kind of estimate at the cost. We can roughly estimate after talking to our consultant that it'll be under $5,000 for the coastal development permit itself. the application and the permit. And now we've got Eric here today from Sea Valor that will give us a little presentation and briefly explain the benefits of these life-saving rings. Eric?
Hello, John. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'd like to just go through, it's probably about a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation that will explain sort of my involvement and what our proposed solution to this problem is. Can everybody see the slides on the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, my name is Eric Jones, and I'm the founder of Sea Valor. And essentially what that is, we're an organization based out of Emeryville that I started a few years ago to try to help people with PTSD. I've had issues with PTSD myself over the years. And essentially we use ocean and water-based activities to help people. So a few months ago, I was contacted by a friend of the family, a friend of the Pruthes family, after RNA was swept out to sea at Cow Ranch Beach. And after the Coast Guard called off their search after the second day, we became involved. We brought resources and personnel and volunteers and ended up spending just over a month helping a search from RNA. So during that experience, we certainly learned a lot. These are some of the statistics with sneaker waves. Each year, an average of 9 people drown along the Northern California coast after being swept off their feet by sneaker waves. Not everybody knows what a sneaker wave is. So this was from the National Weather Service up in Portland. Essentially, a sneaker wave, they're waves that run up on the beach much further than other waves, including rocks and jetties. So what that essentially means is a person can be on the beach just enjoying, playing on the sand or in the surf, not actually in the water. And waves, they come in sets typically, but every now and then you have one that's much greater and much larger than other waves. And they knock people off their feet. And then as the wave recedes, oftentimes they carry people back into the ocean, which is what happened with RNA. So this was during November 2020 through January 2021. During that 7-week period, there were 12 people that were swept into the ocean just here in sort of the Bay Area, Northern California beaches. And those instances are enumerated on the right there. So out of those 12 people that were swept into the ocean, only 4 survived, which means that in 7 weeks, we had 8 people that drowned because of these sneaker waves. This is RNA. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to know him beforehand, but I've gotten to know his family and his friends and his brother. And every death is a tragedy. But this in particular, it's just absolutely heartbreaking the way it happened. His family, they were there just with some other friends on the beach, and they didn't really know what sneaker waves were. They didn't know the danger. And essentially a wave just came in and took his younger brother, his 8-year-old brother, knocked him off his feet and started carrying him out to sea. And then RNA's 2 parents, they went in to try to help. And then finally RNA went in and tried to help his brother and his mom. And people on the beach were able to form a human chain and get the 2 parents and his younger brother back in. But sadly, RNA was not able to be recovered. And his parents, for about 15 minutes, they watched as he slowly drifted further and further out. So like I said, Sea Valor, we became involved a few days later, and we used helicopters, jet skis, boats, walking on the beaches. And it really became apparent flying up and down the coast so many times, just seeing how beautiful our coast is and how lucky we are to be here, but also this hidden danger. And there were so many instances during these flights where we would see people just on the rocks, fishing, sunbathing, whatever. And on several occasions, we actually saw waves come and knock them off their feet, and they were able to get back up and it was okay. But I think it could have certainly gone in another direction. And people they don't seem to understand the danger of these waves, especially during the winters here. So this was 2 Sundays ago, I believe, the San Francisco Chronicle, they did a really full and thorough story. It was on the front page of the Chronicle and then 2 full pages. They did a really nice job explaining these sort of hidden dangers and listing some of the other instances. These are RNA's parents, and I believe they're actually part of the Zoom meeting now, and perhaps they'd like to speak at some point afterwards. And just wonderful people. But during our courses of conversation and having dinners, we've said, what can we do to try to keep this from happening to other families? And they've started the RNA Foundation in memory of RNA, with the goal being, it's a very straightforward goal, which is what can they do to keep this tragedy from happening to other people and other families? And their ideas are, these are sort of the things we've talked about: public awareness, more effective signage, school programs, and a curriculum. For instance, I went to Oakland Public Schools, and we spent a lot of time talking about earthquake drills and fire drills and even nuclear weapons. I mean, if we were under nuclear attack, you're supposed to crawl underneath your desk. But there was never any talk about ocean safety or sneaker waves. And so perhaps that's something that could be worked in to school programs, YouTube videos, media outreach. And then the second component of this is having something like a life ring, where if somebody gets swept off their feet, somebody can immediately grab it and throw it to the person and help pull them back to shore. In the case of RNA's parents, they said that there are people on the beach throwing tents and anything that they thought could float out to RNA to hope that that would be enough that he could hold on to it. But one of these life rings that are specifically designed for this purpose, I think, would have been much more effective. This is just some examples of local signage. The one on the left is actually at Cal Ranch Beach, and it does mention sleeper waves there. It says danger, strong backwash, sleeper wave, rip currents. The one in the middle is at Mavericks, and the one at the right, in the upper right-hand corner, that's actually the exact spot where RNA went into the water. And you can see the poster to the right is the missing person poster for RNA. But on that sign in particular, there's nothing that lets people know about sneaker waves. And I mean, it's a good sign, and it's definitely better than nothing. But time and time again, people say, family members that have lost somebody to sneaker waves, they say they just didn't know. They didn't know that just walking on the beach could be dangerous. And they knew there were no lifeguards, and signs say no swimming. So obviously they would keep their kids out of the water, but they just didn't know that simply walking on the beach during high tide or high wave conditions could be so dangerous. And another example with the tsunamis, I mean, I'm not sure when the last time somebody was actually killed on a California beach by a tsunami, but there is a precedent for having signs like this. But I think sneaker waves, as far as I know, are much more dangerous and kill a lot more people every year than tsunamis. These are some examples of existing signs in other states and other countries that specifically address sneaker waves. And sort of the research that we've done has shown that having these signs up has reduced the number of deaths by sneaker waves in the places where they're installed. So this is our idea. These are sort of some prototype signs that we put up. These were only installed for a few minutes, just essentially for the photos, so people could see what they look like and how big they are. But it starts at the top, and the first thing is that visual warning, which the yellow triangle is pretty much internationally recognized as a warning sign. And it's hard to tell in this picture, but if you zoom in around the corner, in the 12 most common languages along the border of that sign, it says danger in the 12 most common languages spoken in California. But that's essentially, this is the size of the signs, how big they look. So you have the triangular sign, the warning about sneaker waves, and then the life ring, which is kept in the cabinet below. So this is a close-up, and this is the idea. The yellow one on the left, it says danger in the different languages. And then the important one really is the one that describes sneaker waves. And as you can see, where it says an average of 3 people, that number can be changed. Ideally, it would go down. Several years ago, I was working on a master's in public health back in Virginia, and they had, I think, 7 deaths per year on average of people falling off the rocks at Great Falls National Park. And I was actually part very small involvement, but of helping them install signs, or actually working on the wordage for signs that said, each year an average of 7 people are swept off the rocks and drown. And so in the years after they installed those signs, they went from an average of 7 deaths per year down to, I think, 2 or 3. And so I'm not sure if it was the signs that made the difference or maybe just better education, but I think there is a precedent for showing that signs like this do help. And another issue is that with some of these beaches, especially along the coast, you don't know exactly where you are. And so in a situation like this, every minute can make a difference. And if people call 911 and the operator says, okay, what beach are you at? And they say, I don't know, I'm at a beach somewhere in Half Moon Bay. I mean, that can take valuable time while the operator tries to figure out exactly where they are. So in this instance, for the temporary installation, we just use decals and wrote on their Mavericks. But the idea is that you see the sign, you call 911, and very quickly it could say Cal Ranch Beach, or North Shore at Cal Ranch Beach, wherever it might be. And that alone might save a minute or two, which is valuable, and making sure that the resources and the professional rescuers get there as soon as quickly. And then just another warning, which is never turn your back on the ocean. And that's something that a lot of us learn as kids, but not everybody sort of understands that. And just memorizing that phrase alone has the potential to save lives. And so we thought that having that there would be a good sort of reminder. And these are what they look like. The life ring cabinets are made by a company called Glasden, and they're very, very durable. They've been in business since 1970. The cabinets are weatherproof and UV resistant. The color's actually molded into the plastic so they won't fade. And as you can see, there's 100 feet of line that's attached to these life rings. And so the picture on the lower right, you can actually see how far that is, and it's a pretty good distance. And so the idea is that if somebody goes into the water, they know where this is. It's within a few hundred yards of where they are. They run to it. They call 911. They look at the sign and say, okay, we're at this beach. And while all that's going on, and while the professional rescuers are coming, whether it's the Coast Guard or the Harbor Patrol or the sheriffs or the fire department, at least people on the beach can be trying to do something, which is they'd grab the life ring, they'd grab the line, and then they throw it to the person and either tell the person to swim towards it, or ideally they throw it where it lands close enough where the person can simply grab onto it and be pulled back. So these are just some examples that I pulled off of YouTube, but I've seen these. I've traveled all over the world, and many other places, especially in Europe and Asia, they actually have these on the beaches. And even on the East Coast, Maryland, they have them. Florida, they have them. In New York, along the Hudson, they have them installed pretty frequently. And they've been shown time and time again that having these people essentially just grab the life ring, grab the rope, and hold the line, throw it to somebody, and then pull them back in. And there's many YouTube videos showing these in action. It's pretty straightforward. Every swimming pool, I think, that I've ever been to has one of these, and they're obviously there for a reason. So this is how they would work. Right now, we're privately funding them. We've actually, I think we have about 20 of these ready to go that are sitting in a storage unit. The cost is around $750 per station right now, and hopefully we can get that cost down a little bit through purchasing in bulk. We would like to keep them made in America, keep all the signage local, the installation, and as far as the putting them together, we have Boy Scouts, we have veterans groups, we have the Rotary Club, a lot of people that are interested, and they would actually help with the assembly of these things, and then the installation would be wherever the permits dictate. And we could certainly even help with that if that became an issue, have people drive them to the location, bring the concrete, and then just make sure they were installed however they needed to be installed. And then the public awareness campaign, we've partnered with a nonprofit called Building Bridges, who's very interested in helping with this and has access to radio and digital broadcast messages that can help spread the word. And just sort of speaking it, discussing this idea with people, everybody's been supportive of it that we've talked to. We had the commander of the U.S. Coast Guard sector, SF, Captain Marie Bird. She was actually out sailing with us a few weeks ago, and we discussed it with her, and she was extremely supportive. Congressman Ro Khanna, we had a probably an hour-long meeting with him a few weeks ago with RNA's parents, and he was extremely supportive, and he said he would lend his support in whatever way possible. And the same with Congressman Swalwell. So we haven't really encountered anybody who said it's a bad idea or they don't support it, which is encouraging. This is the RNA Foundation. This is essentially what I was saying earlier, which is his parents just really, their number one goal at this point is to try to prevent this tragedy from happening to other families. This is just a little bit about Sea Valor and who we are. We're a group of volunteers. And this is just a cause that we feel very strongly about. During the month that we were looking for RNA, we had, I think, upwards of 100 volunteers, whether they're flying in the helicopters or going out on boats. But everybody that got to know the situation was just heartbroken by what happened. And during the, I think it was actually 6 weeks of total searching, but really during the first 4 weeks, while we were searching for RNA, there were actually 3 other people that were swept out and died. There was a woman at Pescadero, and we actually flew over her body on one of the days, I think the day before she was found. We didn't see her, but it just so happened that we flew over to Tenitas Creek Beach the day before she was found. And then towards the end of the search, there was a man down at Moss Landing who was on the jetty with his son, and his son was swept off by a sneaker wave. And the dad jumped in and was able to save the son and handed the son up to a bystander, but sadly the dad drowned. And so we spent the next morning in the helicopter for maybe an hour or two flying around looking for that man as well. And then there's a third person up at Pacific. But I think it's just the fact that in 1 month of me flying in a helicopter, we were actually looking for 3 separate people. Just really clearly illustrates the severity and the danger and the prevalence of this. And I think this is just a little bit about me and my involvement. I've had PTSD since 9/11. I was one of the first responders at the Pentagon, and then I also went up to Ground Zero for a couple of weeks. And so, I've seen firsthand what preventable deaths, especially the damage they do to not just family, communities, the first responders. Something like this that's so preventable, it really has a trickle-down effect, and I've seen it firsthand for the past 20 years, the way that it affects people. And so if we can maybe over the next 5 or 10 years do something that saves even just one person, I think that would be a huge success. This was last week. This was at Cal Ranch Beach, where the family got together to dedicate a bench and a picnic table to RNA. But I would just, thank you for your time and for listening to this, and, hope that we can all work together to figure out something that can help prevent this from happening to other people. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jones, thank you so much for doing your presentation and telling your story too. It's never easy, but I think that what you've done has turned something that's tragic into something positive. And I know that, as you mentioned, RNA's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Pruthi, are here as well. And just working together, I think, like you've said, you're turning something tragic into something that's going to be life-saving. So I would like to allow Tarun and Sharmista Pruthi to speak if they choose to do so. If you're, were you, are you able, would you like to speak?
Yeah, we can say a few words.
Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I'm so sorry for just the tragic events for your son. I'm a mother of 2 boys myself, so I understand, how much of a loss, and especially like a big hole in your heart, but what you're doing is tremendous. So thank you for being here, and thank you for working with Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us.
Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I can say a little bit. I mean, we obviously know that none of this is going to bring Arun back, but we really hope that this never happens ever again to any parents. it's devastating for the family, and it's just not a good place to be. And we don't know if the life ring stations and signage that Eric is proposing is actually would definitely have saved him, but it would have given him a chance at least. Right? I mean, San Mateo has a long coastline, and in some ways, I think it's the county's responsibility to at least equip people to save themselves if a need arises. Because these are relatively inaccessible beaches. There's a long walk to get to them, just the stairs themselves, someone coming down the stairs, that itself is too long. And in these situations, I think every minute counts. So first responders try to get there as soon as they can, but it's really the people on the beach that day who saved us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been here either, right? And so I don't know. I mean, this didn't happen, so I can't predict. But I'm sure more effective signage, like what Eric is proposing, would have at least made us more aware and more careful that, okay, even being close to the water is really dangerous on that day. And if we had a life ring station there, I'm definite that someone would have used it, because I
Yeah.
know at that time people were looking for
They were
anything
trying
they
to,
could grab onto.
yeah, they were trying to make a take out a tent and stretch it into a rope. They were trying to join the tents all over the beach and trying to make a rope.
So we know that they would have used it, and whether it saved him or not, that's unknown. Hopefully it would, but I mean, this cannot be acceptable. Just this Sunday, I think there was another incident in Santa Cruz where a man and two kids were washed off again. So we really have to do something to stop this from happening. And this is, I think, a small step in that direction, what Eric is proposing. I think he's done a great job putting it together, and I think it's the right thing to do for the county, and in fact, if possible, scale it to everywhere possible in California.
And what I was going to say, I forgot. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's all we have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for, like I said, everything that you're doing to support this effort. I mean, we'll never know, but at least you're right, there's a chance. So I know that Mr. Jones is very grateful, as well as the Harbor District. So thank you for working with us as well. And
Thank you.
thank you. I see that Sheriff Carlos Bolanos is on this panel too. I know that Mr. Jones had mentioned that, working collaboratively with law enforcement and other emergency responders like fire districts and fire departments will be important. So Sheriff Bolanos, I don't know if you would like to say a few words as well. I think that you're supportive of something like this. So I'm opening this up to you now.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Harbor District for allowing me to say a few words. I'd like to start off by, first of all, offering my sincerest condolences to the family, members of the Sheriff's Office. We're there on that day, and I fully support all of the efforts of the Harbor District, Mr. Jones, and Sea Valor. We fully support this solution for assisting anyone who is in distress in the water. The efforts of our deputies on patrol on the coast who respond to assist people in distress in the water would definitely benefit by this tool. We also believe it provides the opportunity for community and first responder collaboration, and allows whomever initially observes someone in distress and try to safely rescue them. The Sheriff's Office is very much interested in communicating with the Harbor District and determining what are the next steps to identify how we can get this, very valuable tool out and try to protect, persons who are out there on our beaches. So thank you again for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Sheriff Bolanos. I am going to open this up for public comment right now. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this topic, please do so.
President Crowley, I don't see any hands rose.
Okay, I don't either. So I'll open it up to commissioner discussion. Commissioner Matoush?
Sounds like a very valuable tool. I think it'll be interesting with the permitting process. Harbor District is very familiar with the Coastal Commission, Coastal Development. There's so many different officials. The harbor footprint itself will be working with you if my fellow commissioners agree.
Commissioner Zemke?
Oh, through the chair. I think this is a good idea. It may not work in every situation, but it's a step in the right direction and would provide value, I believe. So I'm in support of this.
Vice President Reiering?
Eric, thank you for your presentation and for your work. I think this is the most moving agenda item that we have ever had. Taryn and Sharmisa, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's just unspeakable. I'm very much in support of this, and the only question that I have is, in our staff report, and also in Eric's presentation, there are photographs of these buoys kind of in precarious places, like in the middle of a pile of rocks, where they would be difficult and maybe dangerous to reach. So I wanted to ask Eric about that and how they actually get, what the placement is.
Sure. No, that's a great question. That was simply because I didn't want to be digging a hole or do anything that could otherwise disturb the beach. These were really only temporary, just to have them standing long enough to take the photos. I didn't want to bring tools and start, doing anything that could be construed as installing them without permission. So, but you're right. When they were permanently installed, they would be in an area where concrete is placed in a post hole, and they would be much more accessible. But we use the rocks essentially just to keep them standing long enough for the pictures.
All right, thank you. Well, Virginia, did you have other comments?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, let me just make a comment. I've already said a lot, but I just want to say to Mr. Jones, thank you for coming out and showing this to General Manager Pruitt and me, especially kind of on your day off, if you will. I think that the minute that Mr. Pruitt heard about it, he thought it was a great idea. And then he said, Virginia, come out and see these. And I said, okay. And the minute I saw them, it was a no-brainer for me. So thank you for the time that you took to show us, and even for your presentation today, Mr. Jones, because I think educating not just the elected body, but even the attendees who are members of the public here, most of whom live on the coast, I think it will help, at least show everyone that we do take safety very seriously. It's a high priority for the Harbor District. And I think that as time goes forward, Mr. and Mrs. Prudy, we hope to be able to collaborate with the county and the sheriff's office and even Coastside Fire if needed, or, figure out how the collaboration will work to hopefully put more of these life rings in. So thank you for all of your support and for doing this and bringing a great idea forward. Is there a motion? I'll entertain a motion If anyone would like to make the motion, to
I'll
approve.
move let's see, where is our motion? Recommended motion that the Harbor District lead permitting efforts and cover cost for the installation of 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations on San Mateo County controlled property at Mavericks Beach. Oh, I skipped a part. And to obtain all necessary permitting and cover construction costs for the installation of the 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations at Pillar Point Harbor, 1 at each breakwater. I'm sorry, I read that backward. Is that motion going to work?
I'll second your inverted, oh, yeah, I'm
Well,
on.
so basically we're off in the Commissioner Wiring, we're authorizing staff to use, basically do what you're doing, but what you've moved to do, but to use district resources to do these things.
Correct. I read the entire motion.
Yeah.
I read the second clause first.
If I can restate the motion so it's clear, President Raring or Corrali.
Please.
So Vice President Raring, I believe you said, in essence, authorize staff to utilize district resources to obtain all necessary permitting and cover construction costs for the installation of 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations at Pillar Point Harbor, 1 at each breakwater, and lead permitting efforts and cover costs for the installation of 2 Sea Valor life-saving stations on San Mateo County controlled property at Mavericks Beach.
Correct.
Is that your motion, Commissioner Wiring?
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay, Melanie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz, Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
President Jane Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Rowell.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Please let us know what we can do to, to help even further if you need that. And Mr. and Mrs. Preety, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly need your help
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
around the coast.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, item number 10. Oh, and let me just thank Sheriff Bolanos as well for being here and supporting this. Thank you, Sheriff Bolanos. So moving on to item 10, which is Pillar Point Harbor West Trail Shoreline Protection Project. IFB construction bid. Mr. Moore or Mr. Pruitt, if you'd like to kick off this discussion.
Yes, John Morinwell.
Thank you.
This item is a staff recommendation to reject all bids received for the West Trail Shoreline Protection Project and resolicit the invitation for bid, more clearly defining project unique technical aspects and utilizing the Department of Industrial Relations pre-qualification process for contractors submitting bids. The West Trail Shoreline Protection Project entails the construction of a living shoreline to protect and restore the severely eroded segment of West Trail shoreline, and also addresses drainage issues in the vicinity of the project. The overall project purpose is to provide multiple ecological and community benefits by implementing a nature-based shoreline solution that increases the resilience of the West Trail to coastal erosion, extreme storms, and sea level rise. The district's design engineering team have reached the 100% engineering design stage, and the project construction invitation for bid was publicly advertised consistent with the Public Contract Code. Bids were opened on April 16th, 2021. The district received only 4 bids, regretfully, from this invitation for bid. The district received many questions for clarification of the invitation for bid specifications, technical specifications, which resulted in 2 addenda even prior to the bid opening. The cost amount difference between the 4 bids that we did receive was over $1 million, which could further indicate the need for more clarity to ensure bidders are bidding apples to apples. For the above reasons, staff believe that if all bids are rejected and the district resolicits the invitation for bid, ensuring better clarity in the technical specifications, more bids may be obtained, fully and accurately addressing technical specification scope, thus resulting in fewer change orders during the project. And in addition, staff believe this project would benefit from utilizing the Department of Industrial Relations pre-qualification process for contractors submitting bids, just so that all the contractors fully understand the unique attributes of this project, and that we get bidders that are in fact experienced with working in the marine environment. Therefore, staff recommends the aforementioned motion to reject all bids and resolicit the invitation for bid.
Okay, I'm happy to open up this item for discussion by the commissioners. Any discussion? Commissioner Matoush,
I concur with staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Zemke,
I concur as well.
Commissioner Ryring.
That makes 3.
Okay, I do have a question though, if I may. So I guess it sounds like from the staff report, and I agree that we need to do this, but I guess we're going to be rewriting this so it's more specific. Is that correct? It's just in a more narrowly defined way, so that I guess so that we won't get as many bids that are not as relevant. Maybe that's the way of putting it.
It's not unusual at all. Based on my experience, I've done a lot of these invitation for bids and requests for proposals. It's not unusual at all to have, 1 or 2 questions. There's a period for, during the process, there's a period for questions, clarifications, requests for modifications. However, in this instance, we did have quite a few, an abnormally high number, which does indicate that we could have made the technical specifications a little bit more clear, and we can actually implement the answers to those questions in the new technical specifications that we will include in the new invitation for bid. It is possible that some contractors that were initially looking at it and these they had maybe these same questions or made assumptions that were incorrect and therefore maybe did not bid. There just is no way for us to know for sure, but we are disappointed that we only received 4 bids. And again, it's also very unusual for us to have $1 million difference between the high and low bid. So we'll be re-looking at the technical specifications, trying our best to just to ensure that we answer all the questions for sure that we received during this first process, and make it as clear and concise as is possible, while also, again, we previously were not aware that we were able to use this pre-qualification format. Our template did not include such an option, but we now are aware of it. And since we are aware of it, I believe it is our duty to ensure that we use every tool at our disposal to ensure that we get as many qualified bidders as is possible. So under these unique circumstances, even though we hate to delay the project this has been a long process to get to where we are now with the West Trail Shoreline Living Shoreline Protection Project. But it is a very important project, and we do have a lot invested in it, and we do want to ensure that we handle this invitation for bid professionally, and we don't rush through and end up not, again, taking advantage of every tool at our disposal.
So another quick question. So just so that people would know, how much of a delay would there be It sounds like the original schedule would have had this West Trail project done probably at the end of 2021, possibly within the first quarter of 2022. I don't know how long of a delay this will cause for
We're looking at potentially,
realistically.
yeah, we're looking at potentially 2 months delay.
So still within the first quarter of 2022, possibly.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I don't see any hands for public comment, but I'll open it up to public comment if anyone would like to make one. Okay, I don't see any. I'll close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion for item number 10. Commissioner Mateusz, did you want to make the motion?
A motion to reject the bid and allow staff to reissue with further clarity.
A second.
Okay, any last minute discussion?
I would like to just add, and I'm sorry I didn't mention, I'm just now thinking about it, is that, and just in all transparency, there most likely will be an additional cost as I direct our consultant to, to re-go through the entire, invitation for bid process a second time, at our direction, and to implement the requirements of the pre-qualification process, which was not something that we did originally. So there will be some added hours to the design engineering consultant. I don't think it's going to be anything substantial. I would imagine less than $20,000.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I do think that this is such an important project to the community that, we just need to do it right. So thank you for looking at all of this. So there is a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz, President Jane Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mateusz.
Great, that motion carries. And now we are on to item number 3, which is the Johnson Pier Terminus Operational and Safety Plan. General Manager Pruitt, would you like to kick off this discussion?
Good afternoon, Chair, Harbor Commissioners. I just want to confirm you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, I'll walk through my staff report as part of the brief for this, and then move into the safety plan itself and what I'm recommending or the staff is recommending. And based on the increased activity, larger vessels, and a new hoist has been put in, a new equipment, compliance with the fire code, and a strong desire for the district to assist all tenants in being successful. We worked with the tenants of the Johnson Pier and the fish buyers to develop this plan. I'm not saying they all agree with it, but it was a collaborative effort as best as possible. What I'm recommending, sorry about that, what I'm recommending is the board approve the Johnson Pier Terminus Operational Safety Plan as proposed or amended in this meeting, and the related revocable license agreement with lease amendments, establishing terms for use of Johnson Pier for the operation of fish buying businesses by tenants of the district, and authorize the general manager to execute such agreements with any changes deemed necessary by the general manager. That is Johnson Pier kind of realistically how it looks today. And you can see in that picture, you'll see 3 totes deep on part of the pier where it's being stored. You also see trucks and cars. And this is the area which the main discussion today will talk about and reconfiguring the storage plan. The pier terminus at Johnson Pier, again, supports all 3 companies. All 3 companies are separate independent companies with their own legal rights. They lease from the district approximately the leased building itself. And then in the district in 2017, the latest version, assigned certain areas of the pier to each fish buyer for storage. That storage plan no longer complies with the fire plan or fire code. And with the new addition of hoists, we need to rearrange the pier deck to ensure safety of not only the workers and the public, but also the first responders. In 2000, that's what I said in 2017. As you see from these pictures, it's very congested. On the left, you see two trucks parallel parking, are parked, fix my typo. And then you'll see, and the trucks that are parked abreast of each other are actually exceed the weight limits of the pier. And a recent study of the pier has indicated that there are some pilings that are overstressed and starting to crack. So we have to protect the pier and ensure proper parking of those trucks to avoid overstressing it. And then the picture on the right where you can see the public coming in and actually getting in between forklifts and moving totes as they load into the truck, which is a very dangerous situation. The district does have authority, both under the lease and as confirmed by a recent arbitration award, to designate space on the pier to include tote storage and other storage issues or operations on the pier itself. And that's the authority in which we're doing that. There's two pictures I wanted to indicate that, you know, vehicles are parking in the common access area on the pier. You have a tote in the pier on the left. And then on the right, you can see totes are almost completely blocking the entire pier, and forklifts are running back and forth. So it's very, very congested and needs to be rearranged to ensure a little more operating room to ensure safety. Then again, you have on the main Johnson Pier, you have a semi driving down the pier, you have trucks on the left, and then you have pedestrians and the members of the public walking in between the truck and the semi, behind the semi, and in front of the semi. And then we have random totes that are stored outside of the storage areas that we need to address to ensure the openness of our plan. In developing the plan, we considered multiple things in those 12 items listed. And then we worked extensively with each tenant, proposing multiple drafts and receiving input from each tenant and modifying those drafts based on that input. Multiple changes have been made from the based on the enclosed plan based on input from the tenants. One point on the back is the western edge of Johnson Pier behind the Fish Buyer building historically has been assigned to tenant B, which is the center tenant in the building. And that assignment was documented in the 2017 amendment. But under our plan, we're reassigning portions of the rear pier to all three tenants. So each tenant will have space on that rear deck. Tenant B, the center tenant, will continue to have access to the entire waterfront, and tenants A and C will have to provide them access to the cleats and the ability to tie up their vessels in their areas that are designated. This is a blow up of just the western edge of the pier terminus. A, B, and C, the blocks is the fish building that I discussed, is the Fish Buyer building. And then the different colors are each tenant's space. So you have tenant A with the blue, tenant B with the orange, and tenant C in green. And that's how we divided up the western edge of the pier, 20 feet to tenant A, 30 feet to tenant B, and 20 feet to tenant C. A question has been asked if we can reassign that, or the district have the authority to reassign the pier, and that's clearly stated both in the lease and in the recent arbitration award, as discussed in the staff report, that the district does have the authority to redesignate space on the exterior pier deck. And that's what we're doing. The front operational space for each tenant, I'll go back up to the picture, is all pretty much equal. 19.5 feet by 12. And then tenant C is 18.5 by 12, because their operational hoist area is 6 feet as opposed to 5 feet. So their front access area is reduced by 1 foot. The assignment of the triangle, there is a wooden triangle on the reefer deck between the freezers of tenant A and tenant B that's assigned to tenant B. That remained the assignment. I'm recommending tenant B keep that triangle space because tenant B is the one who improved it to its current state in which it can be utilized as a working area level with the main pier deck. There is a strong desire by the tenants to have additional totes on the main pier because offloading a squid, it could take over 100 totes to store to offload one boat, and they need to have the totes close by and able to make it economically sense to have all the totes out there to unload the boats in time and load the trucks. So we're recommending that when it is an active or a busy time for squid offloads or crab offload, and we have trucks on the pier, that each tenant will be able to store totes on the main pier. It's only 1 row deep, 4.5 feet from the rail, as indicated there. And then the truck, actually I'm talking about a different space. I thought that was the main pier. This is just the tote storage on the terminal access. I apologize. So tenant B or tenant A has 360 square feet. Tenant C has 234 square feet. And then tenant C has the hoist area, which is 324 feet. And the operational area of the hoist is totes could be placed there when they're being loaded and offloaded for operations. And the blue and the green are permanent tote storages, so they don't have to, those don't have to be actively worked. It's storage. Overall, the square footage we assign to each tenant. Tenant A has, this plan has tenant A at 1,200 or 1,206, which is 32% of the space. Tenant B is 1,275, which is 33.8%. And tenant C is 1,290, which is 34.2%. And then of course, the lease all requires the tenants to cooperate with each other as they conduct their businesses out there. To operationalize or to the operations plan, we're recommending that a revocable license, which will also amend their lease and assign the spaces, be executed for that space, and that if it be tied to the real property lease held by each tenant, and a violation of the license would be a violation of the lease. And let me go over to the safety plan itself. This is the actual safety plan that was forwarded to you. And I covered a lot of this stuff inside, or a lot of the information in here with the staff report. But I'll just point it out. This is a figure 1 is the pier terminus, where you can see all the assignments all the way across. And then this is the storage. Because tenant C and tenant B have limited storage on this pier deck in this area now, we move some additional storage over to this side of the pier opposite the ice house and provides them with permanent tote storage on that area. We moved the truck loading line to the end of the ice house pump house area near H-Dock, and that's where trucks will back up to get loaded. The entire area behind that truck loading line and then onto the pier will be an operational space for loading trucks. So I expect to have full totes being stacked in this area and loaded into trucks while maintaining an area to operate and fire access. All the active work zones in front of the buildings will have to be are only authorized for use during active operations, and no permanent storage can take place with totes or equipment. All fork trucks have to must not unreasonably interfere with other forklifts or other equipment or operations on the pier. And then the obligation to cooperate listed, the square footage. Each tenant will be responsible to own assigned spaces clean of debris and garbage. And then I'm getting tons of emails. The hoist area will be at active work zones. Again, only active totes could be put into there. The main Johnson Pier, and as I started talking about earlier, over on the left-hand side of your screen, it says Pier Terminus, see figure 1. That's the pier terminus. This is the main pier that runs north and south. The red blocks are truck loading zones. So if it's a semi truck, you can put a semi truck in each spot, or you can, if it's box trucks, you can put up to 2 trucks in each spot. And then opposite the trucks, as you can see, are active tote loading zones or storage areas where each tenant will be authorized to access their totes. And then I flipped their access from the main Johnson Pier to this pier. So tenant B is first, C, then A, as is the reason for why I assigned each fish buyer to a specific area on that pier. One big change from the past is no truck may be parked abreast of another truck to include passing on Johnson Pier. So if there's a truck in the northern parking, the truck in the south cannot leave until that truck is cleared, even empty trucks. They cannot pass or be next to each other at any time. So we'll have to coordinate that closely to avoid the overstressing of Johnson Pier. The common access area, which is gray on both, are designated areas, and you can't unreasonably block or interfere other tenants in the common access area. But within that common access area is a 16-foot corridor, which has to remain clear at all times, except for transiting forklifts for emergency access and fire lane purposes. Covered active work zones and active tote storages in the hoist areas. And the western face, again, is going to be all the water on the western face will be assigned to tenant B, and tenant A and tenant C shall allow and provide access on the pier deck to tenant B on a not to interfere basis to service or tie up their vessels. The loading is pretty basic. And again, the big point here is no truck may pass or be a side by side with each other. And then also trucks will be serviced on a first access basis. No truck or other vehicle will be permitted to load or offload seafood for commercial purposes without prior notice to an authorization from the harbor master. The other thing this plan does is it shuts down Johnson Pier to all other truck traffic. So the current parking method or practice of Johnson Pier with trucks all the way down the north side of the pier will be blocked, and trucks needing access for loading and unloading will have to get access and permission from the harbor master to drive in, unload, and then leave. And those are limited to active loading in 20 minutes apiece, unless you have permission from the harbor master to do something different. And then also commercial fish buyers are prohibited from conducting business at Pillar Point Harbor without a valid commercial activity permit or lease. At no time in commercial offload of seafood permitted from docks A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or H. Commercial purchasing of fish and seafood through any of the fish buying companies operating or valid lease with the harbor do not require a separate commercial activity permit. We'll also block access for the public when there's operations on the pier terminus, and that way the pier operators or the fish buyers can operate without members of the public walking through their operations. The south end of the pier terminus will be designated as a fire lane and must remain clear except for equipment totes being actively worked. Better definition would be a fire curb. And then parking, as discussed, won't be allowed on the main pier during offloading operations or during peak times. Tote storage, I went through already and covered. The hoist, same thing. Tenant C or tenant B will be required to put a limiting device on the north-south, or not the, what is it? The southeast, there we go, southeast corner of the pier to keep it from swinging into the active work or the fire lane. And then also the fork truck operators have to be professionally certified in accordance with California standards. And the hoists have to be certified in accordance with California standards. There's going to be no flammable material, wooden pallets or boxes or other dunnage or debris shall not be stacked on the pier. And the safety corridor must be at least 3 feet must be maintained around the fish buyer building on the pier terminus. It currently is blocked and we're working on clearing that up. Off the dock sales will be prevented during operations when the pier terminus is under operations. And then off the dock sales will be allowed on the other docks during operations, but no cars or trucks will be driving onto the pier at that time. The district will be marking the areas for storage and marking the lines for the truck and loading lines. The district will put up proper signage telling the public and the tenants and anybody else working on Johnson Pier about the rules and different areas. The district will improve the rail at the pier terminus to ensure that or to prevent totes from being bumped over onto floating docks or onto the fuel dock or the pump out dock. And then the obligation to cooperate, I always put in there. There's a bigger picture of the plan itself. There's that same blow up that I showed you earlier. This is the pier that I showed you earlier. This is the main Johnson Pier. So this plan, again, equal square footage, pretty close, all within 100. There was another plan that was submitted to us earlier today from tenant B. Which changes a little. Tenant B has requested that the board consider keeping the entire west end of the pier over behind the fish buyer building assigned to tenant B as it currently is. And then assign this triangle space in front of tenant C to C and this 203 square foot to tenant A. If I did that, the square footage changes to tenant A being 1,229 square feet, tenant B would be 1,635 square feet, and tenant C would be 1,281 square feet. Tenant B, as indicated, has stated that his operations won't allow him to operate within the 30 feet because during crab season, he has crab tanks, or they have crab tanks out there. And squid season, they have generators, squid pumps, and other equipment they need to operate their business. If tenant B is on the line, I'll let them finish up their statements. But I wanted you to see what they also proposed and what effect on the square footage that would have. Or any questions? That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Okay, so I thought that was very thorough. It looks like we have a couple of public comments, so I am going to open up public comment for this item, item number 11, which is the Johnson Pier Terminus Operational and Safety Plan. So those who are making public comment should refer specifically to this item and comment on this item specifically. Public comment will be for 2 minutes. And I will open up public comment now, starting with John Ullum.
Hold on a moment. For some reason, when I share the timer, I cannot see anything else. So hold on a moment. Let me try to figure this out. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Ullum.
Hold on, I need to unmute John. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks, Melanie.
I'm sorry. Well, let's try this again.
I believe I'm unmuted.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, President Jane Corrali, for the opportunity to speak. As you know, the pier is too small for the amount of activity that's going on out there. You can rearrange it all you want, but according to the documents that were generated from the arbitration, it is clear that the pier is the same size as it's always been, but the operations that are occurring there are far more extensive. And yet there doesn't seem to be any discussion about spending the $7 million that Ms. Jane Corrali claims the district has approved and on hand for improvements to Johnson Pier. This is really confusing. These people who work out there provide a great service to our community, are part of the actual fabric and image that we associate with ourselves in the coastside community. And they feed their families, they feed a lot of people, and they work hard and they work a dangerous job. And you're all making lots of rules, trying to tell them how to do their jobs, when you not seem to take any responsibility for the fact that the pier is too small for the size of the operations that are occurring out there. So I'd please like to have you address the $7 million, why you're not spending any of it that Ms. Corrali has stated for the record is available, has been approved, and is ready to be spent on refurbishing Johnson Pier. Thank you.
Okay, next public comment will be Captain Smitty for at 2 minutes.
Okay, let's try that.
Captain Smitty, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Madam President, Harbor Commissioners, and members of the Commission. My name is Captain William Smith, and I'm the owner of the CPV vessel Riptide. In response to this, to block access to our customers is unacceptable. To monopolize for one sector to the detriment of others does not allow for our customers to board vessels in a timely manner. There needs to be a public access kept for the other sectors that need to access our client, our businesses. We work on strict time schedules, and to be blocked for periods of time just is not acceptable for aspects of mine and our businesses on the pier. As an example, I run multiple ashes scattering trips, and I'm in order to keep them on schedule, we need to have access for those on a timely manner. So by closing down the dock, this would cause undue problems for my business, and I know for others. This is not really an acceptable method to close the pier down. Plus, there needs to be access to the docks by trucks not blocking them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person I'll call on is Porter McHenry. Mr. McHenry, are you available for public comment?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thanks. My name is Porter Henry, and I'm one of the 3 leaseholders on the end of the pier. I've studied the new safety plan and been part of the design. Honestly, I can say I'm not happy about the safety plan, but still request the board approve it. It brings many changes to the way things have been operated on the pier for the past 20 years, and change can be difficult and scary, but sometimes needed. Figuring out the needs of the tenants, fire marshal, and all the requirements fell on the shoulders of the general manager. Through this process, I've gotten to know General Manager Pruitt, and I've gained much respect for him. He has been patient, listened openly, considered all input, responded timely to all questions, and has done so very professionally. This is a great change from the past general managers and very much appreciated. It took months and lots of effort to get this to this latest version of the safety plan. Honestly, I cannot see a different way to accomplish all the needs and goals required. 3 Captain's second hoist was first installed in 2014 and has been a major contention since. I've never opposed any other tenant having a second hoist or any other operation unless it negatively affected myself and other tenants and users of Pillar Point Marina. I was forced to file an injunction at the end of 2019 against the hoist since it had been installed and operated without any operational or safety plan for 6 months at that time. This installation led to major congestion and unsafe working conditions that still continue now since there is still no operational and safety plan in effect at this time. These actions led to arbitration, and the outcome of the arbitration was the district gaining authority to create a safe working environment. This is the first actual plan to be proposed to be in effect since the hoist was installed in 2014. I got a few more, but I'll email the rest of my comments. And I would just like to end it with, please approve the operational plan and let's move forward together to make Pillar Point a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McHenry. Next, I'll call on Sherry Ingalls. Ms. Ingalls? Melanie, have you unmuted Ms. Ingalls?
Yep, I think she has to accept the request to unmute.
Okay, Sherry Ingalls, did you receive the unmute request? Okay, I can go on and come back to Ms. Ingalls. That makes it easier. I see Larry here. Larry?
Larry, accept my request to unmute.
Oh, they handed it. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of feedback.
I think you have to turn that one on. It's okay. This is Larry Furtado with 3 Captains. I've been using the back there for 40 years. And we have generators, tanks, grab tanks. And this is going to be pretty hard for me to change things around. And squeeze me down to 30 feet. It's just not going to work for me. I unload more squid than anybody else in the harbor. And this plan is ridiculous. We got squabbles in the front of the building. We're going to have squabbles in the back of the building. And it's just not right. It's in my lease. I don't think the judge wanted you to take away from our lease. They were more worried about the traffic. There's no traffic out back there except me. So I wish the harbor would reconsider this and do what's right. It's mine back there and it should stay that way. We got to have a generator back there because we don't have enough electricity. We have to have a big tank back there to hold our wastewater from the squid boats, but we don't pollute the harbor. And then we have our squid pump back there. We used to run it through Morningstar with a sharing deal, but B&Z sold out. Betancourts want to have their own pump, so we have to go through the building. And I'm the only one out there that has to go through the building at a disadvantage. So I just wish you'd reconsider. And I have another person that's going to talk that does the squid. That's going to give you the square feet is not right the way they measured it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to Sherry Ingalls. I don't know if she can hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
We figured out, we actually have Sherry Ingles and Bob Ingles. I don't know if we can do the 2 minutes, but we'll give it a try here. Our concern is, like Captain Smitty said, from what we understand by reading the proposal, you're talking about shutting down all traffic, all foot traffic, while loading and unloading of the trucks is taking place on the pier. We don't want to interrupt their business at all. We think that they're a fantastic part of this business, or this harbor, and we support whatever works best for them. But at the same time, we've got to ensure that our customers can access our boats to load in the morning and to unload when we return. So if there is unloading of squid or fish or crab taking place, we still need to make sure we do have access for our customers to be able to get down to the boats and return once the boats return to the dock. Now I'm going to turn over to Bob.
Real quick, I'll try to make my 1 minute. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Pruitt, for your presentation. We are a working pier. I understand that, and we do appreciate all the businesses working on the pier, and we have to work together. I don't usually intervene in something unless I don't have a dog in this fight until now. If we can't have our customers walk down the dock at 4:30 to 7 o'clock in the morning minimum, that's prime time for squid hours. That's prime time for unloading. We can't operate, and that can't be done. I mean, it's not acceptable. So we have to figure out a way to work around this, and maybe the next agenda item, think I have an idea in the future here, the near future, how the harbor could work around this, and we can all see a solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Corrali, can I address something real quick?
Actually, yes, please. And you can address it to the commission as well, Mr. Pruitt.
My explanation of that may not have been very clear. I'm not suggesting or recommending we block pedestrian access to Johnson Pier during offloads and when trucks are out there for the entire pier. The line in which I'm talking about is beyond H-Dock. And so blocking pedestrians will be mainly where it says authorized personnel only on Johnson Pier today. We're just going to make the line a little bit more pronounced and enforce the rules to keep pedestrians and the public from walking through the forklift track in that extremely narrow area where they're going back and forth. But pedestrian traffic on the Johnson Pier itself up to H-Dock will be open for pedestrian traffic.
Thank you. Frank Sousa. Mr. Sousa, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I'm a commercial fisherman from the harbor there, and I have been for some time now, greater than 10 years. And I just wanted to say that it's important to me and a lot of the other fishermen that the companies we offload to the pier are operating in a safe and professional manner. And we also believe that it's not the job of government to advantage one business over another. So I am in favor of the plan that has been shared, and it seems to be equal for all three buyers. And it's good to see them working together like that, and equality. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on, where is it? George Wales. Mr. Wales?
President Corrali, just got the unmute request.
Okay, thank you.
And Larry Furtado didn't have time to thank General Manager Pruitt and his staff for all the hard work they've done. Everyone, and I heard Porter McHenry say this, everyone agrees that the safety aspects of this plan are critical and have been needed for some time. and they are a great improvement. They will be a great improvement during crab season and busy squid season times. What three captains and Mr. Furtado were talking about is the problem at the west end of the pier. Just a couple of days ago, the staff for the first time suggested taking away 20 feet at either end of the west side of the pier. As Mr. Furtado said, three captains has used that for 40 years. When 80-foot boats come in to tie off, they're going to want to not only use cleats, as Mr. Pruitt mentioned, but they may want to maintain parts of their boat. They may not be able to see if there's totes stacked high on either end of the pier. But most importantly, the other tenants all have significant dock length. If you look at any of the enclosures, and I'm not going to take time to screen share, they have the entire side of the building and all the way up to, in Morningstar's situation, they go clear past the service dock. In McHenry's, they have all the way up to the end of the building and then all the way east for 80, 90 feet. There's no problem for them loading and unloading boats. So I would urge you to reconsider that one part of the plan that was sprung on three captains a couple of days ago and adjust the space elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Damrosch.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you, Commission. Thank you for taking up this agenda item this afternoon. My name is Lisa Damrosch. I'm one of the owners of Morningstar Fisheries in the fish buying building at the end of the pier. And I'm giving comment today to ask the board to approve the safety and operations plan as presented to you by General Manager Pruitt. I did a little research and just wanted to share that on average, about 8.8 million pounds of seafood per year is unloaded over Johnson Pier. And that's a lot of product to go over what is actually a pretty small and congested pier. It also has an important economic impact that represents around $11 million on average. And that's just the initial offload value. Doesn't really count for all of the impact on our economy as that fish moves through the system. We really appreciate the district's recognition of the importance of commercial fishing and that General Manager Pruitt has taken the time to come up with a plan that not only meets the safety requirements for the fire department, but that also maximizes and equalizes opportunities for tenants on the pier. We appreciate that's a difficult balance. And I think that this plan really achieves the best that it can be based on the limited space that we have. We recognize the district's authority to reconfigure the pier for safety, and something we've actually been asking for many years. There's surprisingly never been a comprehensive safety and operational plan, and this is a really great step forward. And just really want to thank General Manager Pruitt for engaging the tenants in this process and for the open communication, and just ask the board to approve the plan.
Thank you. Hold on. Steve Fitz.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
All right, thanks. Yeah, my name is Steve Fitz, and I am also a co-owner of Morningstar Fisheries with Jeff Betancourt and Lisa Damrosch. Also own my own business, Mr. Morgan Fisheries, and operate fishing vessel Mr. Morgan. And as a stakeholder in the industry and owner of one of the three fish buying companies here at the end of the pier, I would just like to offer my support of the current spatial plan that General Manager Pruitt has delivered and is being considered here today. We very much appreciate Jim's efforts in this process. He's instigated multiple meetings, and while they weren't always agreeable, and comfortable at times. He's proven to us that it's in his best interest in coming to the best possible solution. Obviously, safety is paramount, and finding a proper balance to ensure safety in an old and outdated space is endlessly challenging. And I just believe that this is probably the best operational plan to address this to this point. At Morningstar, you know, we're in the corner, so we have many challenges with that. But we do the best we can to maximize what limited space we have. And you know, as commercial fishermen, we're good at adapting to what we do. So we believe in following the rules and want to be operating out there in compliance. Up until now, there really hasn't been anything that we know what we're complying with. So we would just like to ask that this be implemented as soon as possible, because the longer that we operate without a plan, the more chance there is for problems. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Jeff Betancourt.
You hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Betancourt.
Yeah, my name's Jeff Betancourt, and I've been a commercial fisherman here all my life, 4th generation, and I'm partners with Lisa Damrosch and Steve Fitz at Morningstar. And I'd just like to say I concur with everything that they've said, and this has been a difficult process, and Mr. Pruitt has done a very good job of trying to be fair and working through this process. And we're pleased to have rules finally and a safety plan that we'll know what to follow. And that we believe is going to make the pier a much safer place and just make it better for all of us. So I'd just like to say thank you for your time and to please pass the motion as Mr. Pruitt has presented it. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'll open it up to, I'm closing public comment. It looks like everyone has had a chance to speak. So I am going to open this discussion up for commissioner comments. Commissioner Reiering, Vice President Reiering.
Thank you, President Tancarelli, and thank you to all the members of the public who weighed in today. Jim, I want to commend you for the heavy lifting you did with regard to designing a safe and equitable solution to tote storage, winch, and workspace in the limited space available. The Harbor District does have the authority and the obligation to create a working plan for the fish buyers, tenants, and the public, and it really has been challenging. I've seen each of the proposed reconfigurations, and I can imagine the hours of work and negotiation that have gone into each one. I don't see that there's much of any elsewhere to rework this plan. It does look equitable and well thought out. And I'd like to hear the other commissioners' comments, but at this point, I do stand behind our general manager's efforts and the plan presented this afternoon.
Thank you. Commissioner Zimke.
Yeah, I too would like to add my appreciation to the initiative that's been expressed by our general manager, Mr. Pruitt, and taking the bull by the horns and really moving this safety plan forward. I really think it's something we need to do. The only question I have is whether or not the proposal from 3 captains is within the range of workable, or if Jim has any comments on that.
Jim? You're on mute, Jim.
Yeah, I've had to find my mouse, move it around. I apologize. I considered, I received that letter this morning after the staff report and the safety plan were submitted to the board. But I talked over those issues with Mr. Furtado, Tenant B. and did provide, he did provide me with those comments earlier. In essence, not in total like he did with the written letter. But what it came down to was providing equal space for all fish buyers up front. And then the other tenants A and C also had valid uses for that limited space on the back behind their buildings. I thought in working with the plan and the square footage, it was both equal and equitable to assign those areas to tenant A, B, and C in accordance with that square footage. As respect can 3 captains operate in that 30-foot space? I agree with Mr. Furtado. It's going to be very, very difficult for him, and he's going to have to re-engineer his operations to be able to work in the space as designated. I also want to clarify that the entire waterfront there in front of the west end, the entire length of the pier, plus Mr. Furtado's boats will have priority to hang over on the pier over other boats assigned to 3 captains. And tenant A and tenant C, the outside tenant will be required to provide 3 captains and their customers access to be able to tie up their boat on the pier itself.
Does that answer your question, Commissioners?
Yes, that does. Thank you, Jim.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I have no other questions.
Commissioner Matoush?
I had some comments. I guess we've had issues with fire access on the back. I was on the pier a couple weeks ago and ran into the fire marshal or whoever it was who was doing the inspecting. So that'll still have to be addressed. I think one of the things that comes to my mind is when we say 2 trucks, we're over stressing the pier. It's going to take a lot of working together to get 3 trucks. I was wondering if any of our fish buyers have considered using the area over by the public hoist with a squid pump. You know, there's been a lot of concern raised about enforcement. We've had numerous comments, emails, and things. I'd just like to say, you know, the old expression was there's a new sheriff in town. We could say it's a new commander, but right now we got a new general manager and we got a staff that's going to work hard to try and keep everybody in line. There's going to be some squabbles and not everybody's going to get along, but I'd say we've just got to try this. You know, I think it's going to be an immense challenge because the history of the end of the pier, first there was 1 squid pump, then there was 2 squid pumps where 2 of the people shared. And if you've actually worked out there or been out there during this season, 2 is amazing chaos. It's maybe not controlled chaos, but it's seriously chaos. 3 is going to be a spectacle. Yeah, but the only thing is, let's try as hard as we can to get along. We already have the rules that say tenants are obligated to work together. I think that the way this has come out lately with 3 captains, I hope that the other 2 will not unfairly encroach in his use of the back, because we all want to get along. We all want to work. Everybody's got things to accomplish. It's been a tremendous amount that went into this. And at this point, I'm going to support the general manager. But it's, you know, this is going to be subject to how's everybody getting along? Is anybody encroaching? Come on, let's all get along. So those are my comments.
Okay, so I've got some comments too. I just want to thank General Manager Pruitt for the hard work that he's put into redoing the plans. If this is not a recent conflict, this conflict has been going on ever since I have been on the Harbor District Board back in 2015, when I first got appointed. And the conflict has always, just been, it's been escalating. And I think that General Manager Pruitt's plan helps us resolve things in the most equitable way, which also allows us not to favor one tenant over another, which as a public agency, we should not be doing anyway. I think that the space differential, I can't remember what you've got up there, General Manager Pruitt, but I think Morningstar had like 1206. Three captains had what, 1275, and Porter McHenry had 1290, something like that. I don't remember all the numbers off the hand, but around that.
That is correct.
Something, okay. So I do think that, it's never going to be exactly equitable, but I do think that the small differentiation in terms of square footage is going to allow for workspaces to work for, the businesses, to allow them to operate. I do not believe that the Harbor District wants to harm any tenant, because at the end of the day, the revenues that come in from our tenants, that's very important, since we are also an enterprise district. 35% of our revenues are from enterprise funds. So, we're trying to do the best that we can, and we want to support the businesses, and not just, now, but even in the future, as much as we can. So I do support General Manager Pruitt's design. I think that he takes safety into consideration, as well as trying to be as fair to all the tenants as possible. So I have closed public comment, and I don't think that I'm going to open public comment anymore. So I would entertain a motion to for this item, if any one of the commissioners would like to make a motion. Commissioner Wiring, I don't know, I see that you're not muted anymore.
I'm happy to make the motion, and I think I need practice since I did so poorly earlier. All right. I move that we approve the Johnson Pier Terminus operational and safety plan as proposed, as amended, and the related form of revocable license agreement with lease amendments, establishing terms for use of Johnson Pier for the operation of fish buying businesses by tenants of the district, and authorize the general manager to execute such agreements with any changes deemed necessary by the general manager.
Second.
Okay, so that's a motion by Commissioner Wiring, seconded by Commissioner Matoush. If there is any further discussion by the commission or commissioners, please, start your discussion if you'd like to do so at this time.
President Corrali, if I can make one change or recommend.
Please.
Vice President Raring read the motion as proposed and as amended. So I just clarified that there is no amendments being proposed right now, and that the board is recommending the plan as proposed.
Commissioner Wiring, are you okay with that small change we're taking out as amended?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Pruitt.
Okay.
For 2.
Commissioner Matoush, are you okay with that second? For the removal of that, the words as amended, and it'd be just as proposed?
My second stands as amended.
Okay, no other discussion that no hands raised that I can see by commissioners. Let's do a roll call vote, please, Melanie.
President Jane Crawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Wiring.
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush.
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke.
Aye.
So that motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of the members of the public who were here to speak. Item number 12 is vehicle parking, Johnson Pier Safety. General Manager Pruitt, you can kick off that discussion, please.
Yes, again, good afternoon. This is a proposal to update the parking. Let me just make sure I'm unmuted. The parking regulations at Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. The main effect of the change would be Pillar Point Harbor and Johnson Pier. Our current rate ordinance, I'm trying to pull up my report. I apologize. My screen is behind the times. The ordinance itself provides us, the harbor master, with the authority to manage parking at Pillar Point Harbor and at Oyster Point Marina. But I want to make sure or clarify in there and clearly state that the harbor master has the responsibility to monitor safety on the pier and to control traffic with relations to parking on the pier itself. And I apologize, I'm still trying to get my agenda to pop up. One moment. It closed.
You okay, Commissioner, Mr. Pruitt?
Yeah, I just have I had too many things open and my system crashed.
Oh, no problem. Does
So it's
John
coming
Moran
back.
want to kind of take over?
It's coming up right now.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Thank you. Sorry about that, Jim.
It's vehicle parking. There we go. So what we're recommending is a motion from the board to direct staff to publish a notice in the newspaper of general circulation within the district for not less than 20 days prior to ordinance code amendment and adoption, and place the resolution to amend the district parking ordinance of 3.35 for consideration on the agenda for June 16th, 2021 at the district board meeting. So today we're just asking us to be able to post it and then come back in June for final adoption. Over the past decades, Johnson Pier, which I was proud to find out was named after Rear Admiral Johnson of the United States Coast Guard, who was one of the original commissioners and board president of the Harbor District, has increasingly encountered significant growth in public use, recreational boaters, and commercial fishing activities. It's changed from a remote working coastal fishing harbor and harbor of refuge to a tourist destination with access to the coast, the ocean, coastal trail, restaurants, and shops. There's several reasons for the overcrowding on the pier, to include increased fishing, the addition of floating docks, increased number of vehicles, increased size of vehicles, significant increase of off-the-dock sales, and lack of compliance with harbor rules and district ordinances. The number of vessels have increased from the 60s, from a few dozen to well over 400 inside the harbor now. And as you can see from the pictures, the original Johnson Pier was narrow and the cars were smaller on the left there. And then Pillar Point Harbor there on the right with pictures where there's no floating docks at all and a limited number of vessels. Then you see on the two pictures below, actually, I'm not sharing my screen, am I? I apologize.
I'm just following online.
Then the two pictures below, you see there's a semi truck. Again, you've seen that picture earlier tonight or this afternoon with people walking around it as it's moving down the pier. And then the picture on the right is just a normal afternoon or weekend of heavy fish buying activity by the public, buying fish off the boats, which is one of the great things about Pillar Point Harbor, and we want to continue to encourage. But we have to do it safely. Commercial vessels have also grown in size over the years. With larger vessels means increased load size and increased number of trucks on the pier and totes to get the seafood off. This has all caused overcrowding and space conflicts on Johnson Pier, resulting in hazardous and unsafe conditions. There again, there's got another picture of just a normal day with everybody walking on the pier. Cars are parked on the left. It's just very busy. Currently, the pier on the east side of the pier, as you walk out, is marked as with green paint as the 20-minute loading zone, but in the fire lane on the right. The public and the tenants routinely ignore this zone and park on the pier all day long. We recently had one truck parked there for 3 days as a commercial fisherman parked his truck, got on his boat and went fishing and forgot he left the boat on the pier, blocking the loading zone for 3 days. We had another tenant where we've had to, again, tow it off to get it out of the way. Other vehicles are routinely parking on the pier for several hours. Vehicles are parked on varying distance from the curb. And we've all seen where the cars are parked 4 and 5 feet from the curb in the middle of the pier, blocking access for other vehicles. The parked vehicles also restrict access to the pier for pedestrian traffic and endanger the public as vehicles transit the pier, a very restricted and narrow structure. The current practice of parking on the pier, as discussed above, violates Ordinance 3.35.010, which provides the following. It shall be unlawful for any person to drive or operate or permit to be driven or operated any motor vehicle onto or upon the public wharf or pier except for the purpose of loading or discharging freight or passengers, or while actually engaged in the performance of necessary duties. That is not being followed. People are parking on the pier, again, all day long or even over 24-hour periods. Traffic control needs to be taken into effect to improve safety on Johnson Pier. The harbor master is required to have the ability to restrict and or close the pier to vehicle access. The recommended changes to Ordinance 335 clearly define the harbor master's authority to do this. It also adds the authority for the harbor master or the district to contract with the third-party towing company to remove vehicles in violation of the ordinance to ensure the pier is clear. The update is also required to align the ordinance with the proposed Johnson Pier Terminus Operational Safety Plan, which the board just adopted. Again, what we're recommending is direct staff to publish the notice in the newspaper of general circulation within the district for not less than 20 days prior to the ordinance code amendment adoption, and place the resolution to amend the district parking ordinance code section 335 for consideration on the agenda for June 16th, 2021 district board meeting. If the amendments are made, the piers, we're not proposing the pier be restricted or closed to pedestrian traffic at all. Pedestrians will still have access to the pier and to their docks and being able to board the vessels. Fishermen who are required to drive vehicles out there for unloading and loading will still be permitted to do that, but will be a little more strict on the trucks being out there for limited times and only for active loading and unloading or official business associated with their businesses. And the harbor master and the deputy harbor masters will be more involved in ensuring the pier remains clear and safe for all users. Pending any questions, that's my brief.
Thank you. And I will open this item up to public comment. And I see that we have a couple of hands raised. John Ullum.
Again, I'm just surprised that there's just no discussion of the fact of how you got to this point, and that the reason why the pier is so dangerous and has so many issues is simply because it's not big enough to serve the amount of traffic that you're allowed out there, and it has come to occur over the years. There has been no significant investment in Johnson Pier in decades. And as far as I can tell, you have no intention of spending any more money on Johnson Pier. You refuse to address the fact that Virginia Chain Corrali has stated that there's $7 million available that has been approved. It's in the bank, ready to go to work on Johnson Pier. Yet all you want to do is just change the rules. Which is good. I mean, and you probably needed to. You probably should have a long time ago. But why are you not discussing actually resolving the issues that have been caused by years of no investment in the infrastructure that we're all talking about. It's the key piece of infrastructure the district runs. It is the defining feature of the harbor, and it's vital to the livelihood and actual lives of hundreds of people. But you don't want to discuss the what you call the 800-pound gorilla in the corner of the room. The fact that you've got $7 million ready to go, it's been approved, but no discussion on how to spend it to actually alleviate the problems that you're hoping your rules are going to at least mitigate. Thanks for the opportunity.
Sherry Ingalls. Sherry, are you there?
I got the unmute offer, so.
Thank you.
Alrighty, and actually what I'd like to do is I'd like to have 2 minutes, and then my husband, Bob Ingalls, would pop, has a different item he'd like to kind of discuss on this same matter.
Real quick.
So hopefully we can get it done together, but if not, if we can get time allotted for me and then separate time for him, that would be great. And again, I'm Sherry Ingalls. My husband and I own Half Moon Bay Sport Fishing there at the harbor. Thank you all for everything you're doing, everything you're listening to. And we do appreciate it. There's been a lot of effort put into a lot of these different items. The one thing I do see is on the, we are talking about changes to vehicles on Johnson Pier itself, but we've brought up in the past possibilities of changing some of the parking at the harbor as well. And looks like that is governed under the same section. It's a 3.35.020. There has been, on the pier, we know that, yeah, the items you're talking about definitely need to be addressed. But we also, in addition, need to talk about parking in general in the harbor. Like I said, we've talked about in the past, we've been told we have to wait till the appropriate time. Hopefully this is the appropriate time. The parking lot that is between the harbor master office and the tenant row has changed over the last couple of years with the addition of the sidewalk area. And the first row was made unknowns to us until it happened, 2-hour parking on both sides, which left very little parking left in that lot. That parking that is left in that lot that's not 2-hour is continuously parked with vehicles that are there for an extended period of time. We have customers that come to the boats. We have customers come to the shops that are not able to park in that area because it's all completely closed or full at 5:30 in the morning.
12-hour parking.
So I'd like to see if we can have more time possibly to discuss this matter a little further. We just found out about it on Monday. That doesn't give us enough time to really put any kind of plan together. So I'd like to see if we can discuss this so that it can be included in this revision. And also bring the idea back out that maybe this is the time that we need to think about having paid parking at our harbor. There could be validated parking. There could be free parking for a certain amount of times, but there is definitely parking issues in the whole entire harbor that need to be addressed. I think we need more time to do that. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thank you. I agree with the parking on the pier. It needs to be addressed, and I have to admit I've been guilty in the past myself, but we need to take care of that. So I would like to direct you to the staff report here, page 2 of 5, and the pictures. And top ones I recognize. The bottom right looks very familiar. And if you go to page 3 of 5, all those pictures, again, the bottom picture. What do we see here? Well, if you take a look towards the fuel dock, which is the big Texaco sign, you don't see any charter boats in the background. Charter boats are out fishing. All those people on the pier aren't from the charter boats. People are the problem on the pier. They're getting in the way of all the operations. We need the people. I don't want to ban the people. We need them. Off-sale boats need them. What I think we could do is put another dock on the west side, on the east side of the pier, like the west side has, the dock alongside the pier, with a new ramp coming down so people can come down to the dock. They could go all the way down to the charter boats if they have to. They could go down to any dock they want to buy fish. They could use the first ramp that's already there on the west side, or you could put a new one in. But the idea is to keep the people off the pier. And if we keep the people off the pier, the boats could still sell their fish off the boat. The charter boats could still get the customers if they have to walk a long way. But we have everybody out of the way, and the trucks could do their job, and the pier can work like it was designed to do. Thank you.
Thank you. That was 4 minutes, so thank you so much. Captain Smitty.
Just waiting for the unmute. Hello?
You're on mute now.
Yes,
Thank
okay.
you.
Good afternoon, everybody here. I would reiterate both what Sherry Ingalls and Bob Ingalls had to say about the parking. The main parking lot, we've lost the parking due to the expansion of the sidewalks and the addition of the 2-hour spots. My main consideration for that is that this main lot between the harbor master's office and the shops should be designated as a 12-hour parking area. We have so many commercial vessels that park in that area for such extended periods of time. Our clientele ends up having to move or to park in much further out areas. There's the designated commercial parking area over by the restrooms, so my point is that I'm trying to make is that we need to make the main lot a 12-hour parking area, and I also agree that we need to discuss this aspect of the bill further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who have not spoken who would like to speak now? This public comment is still open. I don't see any new hands, so I will close public comment and open the item up for commissioner comment. Commissioner Matoush?
I've heard a lot of good comments from the public. Most of their comments are items pertaining to things not on the agenda. And should they wish these to come forward, I'd like them to be addressed through our general manager and brought up to the commission. Right now, we're talking about parking on the pier. So at this point, I've seen incredible problems with the pier, and I too have been a violator on occasion. So I'm going to support this and say that the other comments were all good, but they're not relevant to the agenda item that we're discussing.
Commissioner Zemke?
Yeah, through the chair. I agree. I think this plan is well thought out, and agree that parking probably does need, parking in general probably does need to be addressed, but not in this specific forum here. So I'm in support of this plan.
Commissioner Wiring?
Yes, I'm in support of it too.
Okay, thank you. Jim, thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this. It's just, it hasn't been easy, and you've done a lot of work and just trying to make our pier safe. So thank you. If there are no other comments by the commissioners or any other discussion, then why don't we go for a motion? Is there a motion to?
We'll make a motion. Recommend that the staff, direct the staff to publish a notice in the newspaper of general circulation within the district for not less than 20 days prior to ordinance amendment adoption, and place a resolution to amend the district parking ordinance code section 3.35 for consideration on the agenda of the June 16th, 2021 district board meeting.
I'll second that, and I'll just say, now that's the way you make a motion without making a mistake.
Any further discussion? If not, then let's do a roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Wiring?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz, President Chang Crawley.
Aye, the motion carries. So we'll move on to item 13, which is charges for birthing services. Consider a 5% increase. Julie Van Hoff, would you like to start the conversation or the report?
Sure. I just wanted to ask if there's any commissioners that have any conflicts on this item.
I think there's at least one. I was going to recuse myself after the staff report, but I can sign off, and I'll look forward to a text, an email, a carrier pigeon, or something, and I'll come back.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mathush. Melanie, would you mind texting Commissioner Mathush when we're done with this item?
Yep.
Or the other, yeah, this item. Thank you.
Just this one item, right? Correct.
Well, for now, yeah. Then when if he has to recuse himself for the second one, we'll have him do the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, President Chang Crawley, commissioners. This item is one of 3 items on the agenda to consider a 5% cost of living increase for the district's rates and fees. This particular item is specifically for the birthing services. There are 2 alternative motions that are recommended. One includes approving the 5% increase to be effective July 1st, 2021, or continuing to postpone the increase until next fiscal year and decreasing the projected birthing service revenue by $167,000 for the 21-22 final operating budget. To provide some background, the board approved postponement of the 2019 cost of living increase of 3.3% on May 20th, 2020. And then on April 15th, 2021, the board asked staff to provide additional information on the impact of the district finances before a decision was made to approve an increase of 5%, which includes 3.3% from 2019 and 1.7% increase for 2020. There are currently 76 accounts that are 30 days past due, with a balance of approximately 121,000. And that's not much difference than what we had in previous years. That I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
So before we start discussion and also take public comment, I want to make a note that we do have a quorum still. So that's why we can continue moving on with this item. And just to make sure that I'm clear, Jim, or Julie, it sounds like Commissioner Mathush should also recuse himself for the next 2 items. Is that correct?
Only the next one item.
Okay, okay.
The last item, I don't believe he would have any conflict.
Okay, then I will open this up for public comment. Captain Smitty.
Okay. Again, greetings, Madam President, Harbor Commissioners, and members of the Commission. My name is, again, Captain William Smith, owner of the vessel Riptide. I would like to make a comment on both items 13 and 14. When I started working in this harbor as a hired captain for Captain John running the Blue Horizon 36 years ago, the passengers from the commercial passenger vessels represented the biggest portion of the public usage of the harbor facilities. At that time, there were 15 large commercial passenger fishing vessels. Also, at that time, there was implemented the passenger ticket fee imposed upon the charter vessels instead of a pay gate. Berth rents and harbor ticket fees have increased over the years with an annual COL increase to a point where we are now paying $2.41 per passenger. I've seen many changes in this harbor in 36 years. The biggest effect to the harbor is the off-boat sales of fish and crabs and the traffic that it has brought to the harbor. There's now a tremendous amount of foot traffic on the pier and in the harbor. There's a general usage fee that we pay, which is the commercial activity permit, but there are no fees collected for the off-boat sales of fish or crab. The amount of people that are in the harbor is on an order of magnitude so much greater than what our passengers represent. We are in effect having to pay a tariff on our passengers in Half Moon Bay and the harbor have become Half Moon Bay and the harbor has become a destination for people of the Metropolitan Bay area. Now tourists from all 9 counties routinely visit the harbor to see a working harbor, enjoy the coast, and get away from the heat. This represents a great disparity between what we are obligated to pay versus the major traffic on the pier. Our passenger clientele now represents less than 5% of the commerce on the pier. Your board report asks for 5% to make up 2 years of this increase. I asked you to drop that altogether. What has been going on with the COVID?
Thank you, Captain Smitty. Your time is up. Thank you. John Olam.
This is an obvious. Okay, this one's pretty obvious. Motion alternative number 2 is the way to go. The district shouldn't even be considering trying to recoup past increases. Obviously, the numbers here have very little effect on your budget. You 167,000. You waste a lot more money in other ways. Do all these guys a favor, do the right thing, and no increases until the epidemic is completely over with. And then they should just start with another 2-3%, not trying to recoup for the last 3 years. It's not right. All right, take care.
Thank you. Sherry Ingalls.
I think I'm unmuted now. Hallelujah. I just have to reiterate that. And again, Sherry Ingalls, Half Moon Bay Sport Fishing. It has not been easy. The last year was insane in our industry. The charter boats have been decimated as far as the number of passengers we can carry. We're doing what we can to survive. And thankfully, most of us are at this point, but I got to admit, last year we were hanging on by a thread at one point ourselves. So I would ask that consideration be given to at least get us through this. We're not through it yet. We're hoping that this year's things start turning around.
And then they'll second wave.
But like it was said, the amount that you're talking to an increase is a drop in the bucket compared to the overall budget. So the little bit that you would take from those that need every bit they can would be very little compared to what it's going to do to the overall budget. So we would appreciate any consideration you can give us.
And
Thank you.
for what we've had.
I don't see any more hands raised for those who have not made public comments. So I'm going to close public comment and open it up for commissioner comments. Commissioner Zimke, I think that you're unmuted. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I guess since I'm new at this, I'm just a question maybe to our general manager. When is the last time the district took a comprehensive look at revenues and equity as far as how revenues are collected and from whom? Do we know?
That's, thank you for the question, Commissioner Zemke. That is one of the missions of the Income and Revenue Committee that was established by President Chen Karali this year. We're looking at that. And then also I think it was the January or February board meeting, February, I think, that we are discussing off-the-boat sales and the commercial activity permit for off-the-boat sales. Because I don't necessarily disagree with Captain Smitty on the number of people that are coming down. A large percentage of those on the dock are off-the-boat sales. And so looking at also equity and across the board of all commercial activities in the harbor, discussing that. And we're actually having a public workshop on June 10th to discuss that item specifically. But again, goes back to the Income and Revenue Committee, in which we've had one meeting so far, and we're soon to have another one.
Thank you, Jim. The other point I just want to make, I'm in favor of alternative number 2 with, I guess, one thought I had is if the recovery is faster than we might think, I guess there might be an opportunity at the end of the year to revisit this, but barring that, I am in support of alternative number 2. And those are my comments.
Okay, Commissioner Ryring?
Yeah, I appreciate that idea by Commissioner Zemke, because I'm vacillating on these motions. On one hand, I'm concerned about the harbor district's, the fiscal implications to us. And on the other hand, I understand what a difficult year this has been. So we are seeing a recovery this year going faster than expected. So yeah, I could especially be supportive of number 2 if we're able to potentially circle back around to it sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryring. So, Jim, so we're supposed to have a revenue and income ad hoc committee meeting scheduled fairly soon, I think. Maybe this report can go to that committee to see what kind of revenue options or income options there might be, if any, or maybe if we look at ways to phase in reinstating fees and even gradually increase fees. Maybe that's the way to go. I think the main thing is why don't we kick this item to the Revenue and Income Ad Hoc Committee and have that discussion first.
May I make a comment?
Sure, Julie, please.
So one of the things that's important to realize is that the final budget is coming to you on June 16th for final approval. Without a clear direction at this time, it will make it very difficult to get that final budget prepared with the district's desires on how to handle the fee revenue. So I just wanted to throw that out, the timing.
Yes,
it does. I mean, we could always readdress it at a future meeting after the budget is finalized and look at the revenues, and then the projections would just increase accordingly if you decide to postpone the increase past July 1st.
Yeah, so let me just say something really quickly, Commissioner Ryring, to address Julie's question. I was going to schedule something before that time, before we have to approve the budget. I think it's important. I hear what members of the public are saying. I think some of these fees are pretty, they're not, I don't think, burdensome, but I don't own a business there. I do want to look, we do need to look at how we're going to fund our operations. Some of these line items will decrease the operating budget by $167,000. That's what, a little over 10% of our budget. Is that correct?
There's a total revenues are $12 million. So
yes, so it's over the 167.
No.
Hold on. Oh, 12. No, I'm sorry. So about a little over 1%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand. Okay. So the point is, I think for me, I'd like to. Sorry, I have only had hot chocolate to eat today. So I think maybe let's look at this in the Revenue and Income Committee and schedule that as soon as possible. Sorry, Commissioner Ryring, if you'd like to chime in here.
No, that sounds good to me. I thought we could explore the possibility of adding a friendly amendment to motion alternative 2, but maybe we don't need to go to that length.
Well, what were you thinking?
Motion alternative 2, and then a friendly amendment to review this in committee as soon as possible. But I don't know if we need to say that.
I don't think we
Tricia.
need to. I think that if the three of us have the consensus that we want to just kick it to the revenue and income ad hoc committee, we can do that and schedule. I can work with General Manager Pruitt and you, since you and I, Commissioner Reiner, are on the committee, then you know, we can start looking at that if Commissioner Zemke is okay with that.
I am okay with that.
So is there a consensus that we move this to the Revenue and Income Committee or ad hoc committee?
Yeah.
Okay. Jim, does that work for you?
So
I
President,
can work
correct-
with you to
if I-
schedule that?
If I understand correctly, so no board action on this item, and
Correct.
it'll be returned to committee for further evaluation.
Well, the ad hoc committee of the
Correct.
Revenue and Income.
The ad hoc committee of revenue and income for further consideration.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'll coordinate with you on dates that work for the committee.
Okay, thank you. Then why don't we move on to the next item, which is item 14, charges for commercial activity permits. Consider a 5% increase. Julie.
President Crowley, do we want to bring Commissioner Mateusz back in and then out again, or?
No, I think since he has to recuse himself for this, I didn't realize he had to recuse himself for this one when he left. So why don't we just finish this item and then we'll bring him in, because it sounds like the item number 15, for item number 15, he does not have to recuse himself. Is that correct, Julie?
Correct, yes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so Julie, item number 14, please.
Okay, so this item is the second of 3 items to consider a 5% increase for district rates and fees. I'm not sure whether you want me to go through this or you want to go straight to the discussion where this would also be forwarded to the Income and Revenue Committee for further discussion. But I'd be happy to continue with the staff report if you would prefer.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just, you know, kind of briefly continue with the staff report, because we do have a public comment. And so for the benefit of the public, why don't we just, you know, kind of finish this staff report piece off, and then we'll move with the discussion after public comment.
Okay, so this item specifically addresses commercial activity permits. The 2 alternative motions include a 5% cost of living increase, or the second motion would be to continue postponement of an increase and decrease the commercial activity permit revenue by $4,000 in the 2021-22 operating budget. As I mentioned in the last item, the board approved postponing the 3.3% cost of living increase for 2019 at the May 20th, 2020 meeting. At the last board meeting in April, the board requested additional information before approving a 5% increase, which includes the 3.3% for 2019 and the 1.7% for 2020. Comparing the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year versus the first 3 quarters of last fiscal year, there was approximately a $2,000 decrease in commercial activity permit revenue, which equates to approximately 830 fewer passengers for the 10 caps that it would cover. With that, I conclude that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open this item up for public comment, and I see one hand, Captain Smitty.
Yes, again, good afternoon, everyone. With what's been going on with the COVID and the drastic reductions in our salmon season, we're barely hanging on to a point where we may have to file bankruptcy. And with there being such a disparity, and the fact that you're reviewing rent, harbor ticket fees, and off-boat sales, I would respectfully ask that the harbor ticket fees be reduced or waived until the issue is resolved and there's equity amongst all users. We are being what is effectively being given a tariff on our businesses that is not being levied against any of the other businesses in the harbor. It is not fair to us at all. And for pushing this to your subcommittee, you're just kicking the can down the street and away from us, those who could have some kind of input into this. We don't have access. I don't know how to access these subcommittee meetings where we would have actually some input on these. So I would rather see this in an open form and presented here to be dealt with as opposed into some private meeting elsewhere. Thank you.
So I just want to make it very clear, General Manager Pruitt, that these ad hoc committees are open to the public, and that will be the case here. So just to make a note, I mean, no one is trying to do anything in secret or in private at this ever. So I think that, as you know, Jim and Julie, really at the committee level, will be looking, just having a closer look at this to where we can discuss more options and look at the nuances. Sherry Ingalls.
All righty, thank you very much. Again, Sherry Ingalls, Half Moon Bay Sport Fishing. When I made my comment on the last agenda item, it actually pertained more towards this one. Because this is a minimal. According to the agenda, motion 2 is reduce the revenues of $4,000. That is a drop in the bucket. That's just absolutely nothing. I looked at the fiscal year 2019-2020 rent report that showed the commercial activity permit fees that the charter boats paid for the passenger service fees, and you take out the Half Moon Bay kayak, you take out Sea Pure, which I don't even know what Sea Pure is. That's $25,000. That only left $15,000 that's being charged to the charter boat fleet. And again, it's the fair and equitable term that needs to be remembered. And the charter boats were paying this fee years and years ago when the charter boats made up a majority of the activity at the harbor. That is not the case anymore. And it has not been the case for years. Yet the the passenger service fee keeps increasing, even though our passenger count has decreased. And again, there are other ways for that fee to be obtained other than being charged as a per passenger fee on the charter boats at this time. So really, we do need to see if we can have some discussion before it comes to a board meeting, if at all possible, with the stakeholders that are involved in this process, to see if we can come up with the best possible
equitable.
My husband's talking about the best equitable way to make it work for us as well as the harbor. So thank you very much for your time. I hope we can work it out.
Thank you. John Olam.
I'm waiting for the top. There it is. There you go. I think part of the issue for at least two of the commissioners on this board is they really do not get why $4,000 matters to people like charter boat captains and operators and fishermen, people like me. I get that some of the members are self-made millionaires, that they don't need to work, that their time is theirs to do as they wish with. It's one of the reasons why we're having this meeting in the afternoon. But that does not represent the experience of the majority of the people whose lives you're making decisions about. Right now, $1,000 means a hell of a lot to a hell of a lot of people. And maybe that's difficult for this board to comprehend. I don't know if any of you have ever lived a lifestyle at a time in your life when $1,000 meant something. I don't think that's the case for most of you now. I think $1,000 is like quite reasonable. As was one of the commissioners early mentioned, that they didn't think these charges were burdensome for these businesses. But I don't think any of you have a clue what it's like to run the kind of business that people like charter boat operators and surf shop operators, and understand just how much everything matters. And they're getting hit left and right by fees and by increases, and they're about to get slammed with increases in commodity prices. Gasoline is going up, oil's going up, everything's going up. So I think you need to reevaluate how you evaluate these things in terms of an outlook that's considerably
Thank
less
you,
than what
Mr.
you grew
Olam.
up
Your
with.
time is up. I don't see any other hands raised, but I'll call for last few minutes of public comment if anyone else who has not spoken would like to speak. I don't see any other new hands, so I will close public comment now and open this up to commissioner discussion. Commissioner Zimke, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
I don't really have any comments other than the comments I made on item number 13, that I would be leaning in the direction of alternative motion number 2.
Commissioner Reiering?
Yeah, I was thinking this should go the same direction as the previous agenda item.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I do want, I'm sorry, Commissioner
That would
Zimke?
make sense.
Yeah, I think so too, but I do want to make a comment. Just as a reminder, again, this part of our budget is an enterprise part of the budget, and there's no question that businesses have been hurt, not just here, but in the entire country. Small businesses across the county, including restaurants outside of the harbor, restaurants in downtown Menlo Park and downtown Burlingame and downtown South San Francisco, downtown San Mateo, East Palo Alto. People have been laid off. So while I appreciate that there are concerns of small businesses within the harbor, I think that this board, which represents the entire county, must look at the entire county and how we are affected by other, or how other businesses are affected as well. Because at the end of the day, the more that we rely on, continuing to kind of forego these fees, taxpayers will be subsidizing these businesses. And that is not necessarily what for-profit businesses are for. That said, what I hope that the ad hoc committee will do is look at how we can transition into something that is going to be meaningful and beneficial to a lot of the for-profit businesses, because I understand that it's been difficult for those businesses in the harbor and our tenants in particular. I know that many of our businesses have actually had a boon during the pandemic because so many people were coming here. That doesn't necessarily mean that boon was part of the businesses that have operated and those who've spoken here, which is the reason that I agree with Commissioner Reiering and Zimke that we need to look at this in a more nuanced way, and let's just bring this back to the Revenue and Income ad hoc committee again, having it open to the public, which we normally do. So let's have that discussion with the thought that when we make a decision, it's got to be balanced for all of the interests as well. People in the harbor are not the only ones who have been hurt by this pandemic. So we need to consider all of that. So if there is a consensus to move this to the Revenue and Income Committee or Ad Hoc Committee, that would work for me. Bill and Nancy, Commissioners Zemke and Ryring, does that work for y'all?
That works for me.
Yep, that works,
Okay.
Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. So Jim, do you have the direction? We have a consensus to move these two items so far to the Revenue and Income Ad Hoc Committee, which you and I will, figure out when we're going to schedule this before we approve the budget, Julie.
Understood. Both agenda items have been moved to the Income and Revenue Committee.
Thank you so much.
Board action
So now we are on item, oh my gosh, 15. So does this mean that Commissioner Matoush can come back in, Melanie and Julie?
Yeah, I just texted him, so he should be back on soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll just give him a few seconds to reappear on Zoom. Have you heard from Commissioner Matoush, Melanie?
He said he's on his way. I was just on the phone with him.
Okay, thank you.
Some of us are a lot more serious about checking out of the system and not being able to use the computer to be compliant.
Well, welcome back, Commissioner Matoush. We are on item 15 right now for rates and fees schedule, except for berthing services and commercial activity permits and lease terms. Consider a 5% increase to be effective July 1st, 2021. Julie, please.
This is the last item of 3 items to consider a 5% COLA increase or cost of living increase for the district's rates and fees and lease terms. The 2 alternative motions include approving the increase in rates and fees by the 5%, except for the berthing services and commercial activity permits, which were separately considered. That would be effective on July 1st, 2021. And increase base lease payments according to the lease terms by the consumer price index increase of 5%. The motion number 2 alternative would be to approve the continuation of foregoing an increase in fees and base lease payments equal to the inflationary increase of 5% and decrease the estimated revenue in the final fiscal year 21-22 operating budget by $24,000. As a little bit of background, on May 20th, 2020, the board approved postponing the 3.3% inflationary increase and deferring lease terms associated with the requirement to increase rents by the change of the consumer price index. If the board chooses to postpone the increase, staff will decrease the 21-22 operating budget by $24,000, which would include $13,000 lease income, $7,000 for launch fee revenues, $1,000 for event fee revenue, and $3,000 for other revenue, which is things like boat washes and laundry and so on and so forth. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I will open up this item for public comment. If you would like to make a public comment at this time, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised, so I'll close public comment and open it up for commissioner discussion. I don't know. I see two. Commissioner Mateusz, you're unmuted. I don't know if you want to make a comment or start off a discussion or what. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I think we can catch Tom up the direction that we went for the previous two agenda items.
Yes.
We decided to kick these to the Revenue and Income Committee where we can have further discussion and explore them more thoroughly. Just FYI, not that we have to do that for this agenda item, but that's where we went on 13 and 14.
and that this was the Revenue and Income Ad Hoc Committee, Tom. So that would, obviously be a public meeting as well. And we can add this to that too, unless
I'd
the
probably go with
commission.
just, alternative one. We've got a budget. We made a budget. We need money for different things. We want to spend money. It'll decrease the amount of time you folks have. So if you want to kick it to the revenue, I'm fine. It's there's 3 plus me on the board. I look forward to seeing what my fellow seems like a weird word when we're not all fellows. My other harbor commissioners have to say. But I'm leaning towards number 1.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Zemke.
In a way, I guess I agree with Tom. I mean, this doesn't hit the commercial interests as much as the other two do. So it may make sense to just go with alternative 1 on this one.
Commissioner Ryering.
I just wanted to clarify something that there is.
Oh, please, Julie, sorry.
Okay, there is a component of the staff report that affects the fish buyers lease payments and tenant row lease payments. So that component is in here. So I just wanted to put that out based on your comment, Commissioner Zemke.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I can go either way. I mean, if we want to just lump them all together and throw them to the rates and revenue subcommittee, that's fine with me as well.
Commissioner Ryering. I think you're on mute. Can you hear me?
I still see her mute microphone on.
Yeah, Commissioner Ryering, you're still on mute.
I'm so sorry. What a rookie. Jill, I'm rereading the agenda item, the staff report. Julie, can you just say a little bit more about your previous comment?
To Commissioner Zemke, based on there are components of this that will only affect the general public, like the launch fees and the event permit fee schedule. There is a small component, which is basically the bulk of the money, which is $13,000 decrease in lease income. That would affect the partners of the district. I'll just say it like that. The tenant row, the fish buyers. Don't know
Okay.
the yacht club if they have.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, great. Thank you, Julie.
So Julie, quick question for you. I am assuming that the CPI number that you used was San Mateo County's CPI, is that correct?
Yeah, it's San Mateo County is included in the San Francisco Redwood City Greater Bay Area CPI increase.
Okay,
Yeah, we agreed to use that CPI last year.
right. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't see, unless I missed it in the report, which is entirely possible, but I didn't see that in the report. Not that it makes a huge difference, but I wanted everyone to know that it was based on our county's CPI. I mean, I agree with Commissioner Matoush that, you know, option one makes the most sense right now. I mean, we're looking at, if you look at the three combined, the other two are we're gonna have further discussion on this to look at the nuances so that, you know, we can see how we can affect the least number of our small businesses. I mean, and I think that a lot of the tenants on Tenant Row have had in general good business from what I understand. So I know I would probably also be in support of alternative one. If anyone else would like to, if any other commissioners would like to make a comment, I'm open to that right now as well.
Make a motion to approve increasing rates and fees by 5%, except for birthing services and commercial activity permit, which was separately considered to be effective on July 1st, 2021, and increase base rent lease payments according to lease terms by consumer price index of 5%, 3.3% for 2019, and 1.7% for 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other last discussion? Okay, roll call please, Melanie.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz, President Chang Crowley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring.
Aye.
So that motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 16 is the Water Quality TMDL Ad Hoc Committee Report. Well, hold on, let me. Yeah, so this is the San Mateo County RCD Pillar Point Harbor Water Quality Update and Proposal for Continued Assistance for our board's consideration. John Moran, would you like to kick off this discussion, please?
If I could, this is Jim Pruitt.
Yes.
We held a committee, a subcommittee, water quality subcommittee, and received a report from the RCD on what they accomplished last year with the funding provided for the Harbor District, and then asked them to present what their funding needs would be to continue assisting the district through fiscal year 2022-2023. The RCD is requesting $170,000 for those 2 fiscal years. And one great thing to note is last year they accomplished everything they wanted to, $60,000 under budget, which we were able to return to our accounts and take it out of that. So this year they're asking for $70,000 for 21-22, and then $100,000 for 22-23. Noah from the RCD just rejoined us and has his hand up. And if I can introduce Noah from the RCD, he is going to make a presentation. Our recommendation is that.
You're on mute, Jim. You're on mute again.
The committee recommendation is for the Water Quality Ad Hoc Committee recommends the board receive an updated presentation and consider the proposal for not to exceed an amount of $170,000 for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 and 2022-2023 to fund the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District for continued support and work associated with water quality projects, coordination with respect to the TMDL regulations, education and outreach and technical assistance, and identification of unknown sources of contaminants. And I'd like to turn it over to Noah now.
Thank you. Noah, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Jim, for the introduction. Let's go ahead and start sharing my screen. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
So thank you all very much. Happy to be here today. Today I'm just going to go ahead and walk you through what we did last year. That includes our annual first flush or first rain program, walk you through the results of that very briefly. And then our main capital project was the removal of a large deposit of fats, oils, and grease from the St. Augustine stormwater line. And we did some water quality testing to assess the success of that project, and I'll walk you through those results, and then get into our proposal for the next 2 years of work. I'm trying to streamline this and not go too much into the history of our work together, but the San Mateo Resource Conservation District has been working with the Harbor District and to address water quality issues in the harbor going back decades, and the main driver of that has been a chronic bacterial problem at the beaches, which is a public health concern. And I'm sure you're all too familiar with this sign in the center of the slide here, warning people that the water is not safe for contact recreation. And the image to the right is some people actually shellfishing in the sand. And you can imagine people might get sick if they're eating shellfish, which are filter feeders, in a contaminated beach. And the big news for this year, the big development was the Regional Water Quality Control Board's total maximum daily load, which was adopted this year in February. And what our history of trying to understand and address sources of bacteria in the harbor, the way we've looked at this is to try to split them up into what we determined to be chronic sources and those we've determined that are not likely chronic sources. So some of these identifying sources is obviously a huge, important part of our job, but in addition to identifying those that are not likely to be chronic sources is also a major accomplishment. And these include boats in the inner harbor, the outer harbor, dogs, birds, and some human sources. And while these are not occurring on a regular basis, they may occur episodically or intermittently. And this is all to say that in the Regional Water Quality Control Board's total maximum daily load, that action plan for reducing pollution to Pillar Point Harbor and Venice Beach, the regional board looks at things a little differently. They kind of mandate that all contributing entities in those watersheds have a plan to reduce all potential sources. So the idea here is essentially two different toolkits, and we've really tried to focus on, with our work in the harbor, things that we thought would move the dial. And these, again, there's two different tool sets for different organizations. And while our scopes changed over the years in response to requests from the Harbor District, it's expanded to include the upper watersheds, and then we've refocused to really make sure that we're using Harbor District resources to solve issues on Harbor District property. The RCD still plans to continue to work with other organizations in the upper watersheds and trying to address those issues just with not with Harbor District funding. So real quick, what we did this year, we cleaned that big fatberg or deposit of fats, oils, and grease from the St. Augustine stormwater line, and we monitored the results. We worked with Harbor District staff and a tenant to address restaurant washing grease into a storm drain. We did our annual first flush, our first rain program. We worked to repair and install signage regarding water quality. This is an ongoing project, and I'll talk to you about that more in a bit. We engaged with the total maximum daily load, that action plan from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And then we reviewed some historical data and determined sand to be a secondary source of bacteria at Capistrano Beach. And I'll explain a little bit more about secondary sources in a bit. Just quickly on to our first flush programs. This is our big annual citizen science project. We get members of the community out, teach them how to use scientific equipment, and go out and collect water samples from creeks and stormwater outfalls during the first big rain of the year. And this year we had 20 volunteers, went out and collected samples from 12 sites, 4 of which discharged to the harbor. We initially had 5, but were unable to sample from the St. Augustine stormwater outfall during this program because it was high tide and we could not get a freshwater sample. But just to quickly summarize the results, All Pillar Point Harbor sites exceeded thresholds for fecal indicator bacteria. That's actually true for all sites in the program this year. And that may come as a shock, but I wouldn't be too alarmed. The first flush program is all about capturing that first big rain of the year, and it's really the worst day of the year for water quality. So we sort of expect that at this point in the first flush program. Orthophosphates were also elevated at Pillar Point Harbor sites. Nitrates were within recommended ranges, so below upper thresholds at all Pillar Point Harbor sites. And then something new this year, 2 of our sites in Princeton had elevated levels of some heavy metals that we tested for. And this is something that we have not seen in San Mateo County in the first flush program going back to 2003. So this is by no means a long-term trend. This may very well be a one-off. We're not sure yet, but it's something to keep an eye on in the future. And then some good news, it does appear that there is a multi-year trend of things improving slightly at the Capistrano outfall in terms of bacteria. Still above those thresholds that we'd like to see them at, but potentially some good news there. And then getting into our big capital project this year, we removed a large deposit of fats, oils, and grease from the St. Augustine line. And you can see actually this image in the center top, the kind of yellowy one, is an image of that deposit. It's a 6-foot pipe, and you can see it was really clogged with this large deposit of fats, oils, and grease and sediment. And it's definitely something that we wanted to take care of. And just a little bit of backstory on this project. In 2017, 2018, we CCTV'd the stormwater system at the harbor. And just for clarification, I'm talking about storm lines today. I'm not talking about sewer lines, right? So the storm lines I'm talking about are those that take rainwater overflow and divert that into stormwater pipes and discharge to, in this instance, the harbor. I'm not talking about those sewer lines, which you pump from restrooms or from kitchen sinks, and those would need to be treated in a sewage treatment facility. So really focusing on stormwater lines. So again, in 2017, 2018, we CCTV'd the stormwater system at Pillar Point Harbor. We sent a little camera truck down there, and we went around the entire stormwater system looking for cracks or defects or areas that might be sources of cross-contamination. And we found 2 segments that needed repairs, and those were subsequently fixed. And we identified 4 segments for future work. And I'll talk to you a little bit about those in the next step section in a few slides.
Noah, let me just interrupt you really quickly. We do have a time limit in terms of our meeting time, and it's 3:58. So I would like to make a motion to extend our meeting time to 4:30. Is there a second? Commissioner Zimke, I think you're muted.
Sorry.
I will second that. Unmuted myself.
Okay, let's just do a quick roll call so that Noah can continue his presentation. I'm so sorry, but these are within our rules right now. So Melanie, if you could do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Ryring?
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush?
You're on mute, Tom.
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
President Shane Crawley?
Aye, so that motion carries. Noah, I'm so sorry. If you wouldn't mind continuing, thank you. It's a great presentation so far. Thank you.
So we were attempting to finish our CCTV inspections of the stormwater system, but were unable to complete them due to the detection of a large deposit of fats, oils, and grease in the stormwater line. And again, draw your attention to that image. Our little camera could not get past that deposit. So we realized this was something that needed to be taken care of. We had a new manhole installed in 2019, and you can see the location of that in the center of this map on the bottom right-hand corner of this screen. And then last year, in the summer of 2020, we sent in a crew who used a vacuum truck, similar to the one shown in the top right-hand corner of the slide, to remove the fats, oils, and grease. And in terms of completing our CCTV work, this was a big success. We completed CCTV of the stormwater system, did not find any additional impairments, places that needed to be repaired or replaced in the stormwater system. So that was a big success. But I know you're all wondering what is the success of this project in terms of bacteria reductions. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it's a mixed bag, but I think the project was a success all in all. And before I get into the data, I'll remind you really quick about our kind of primary operating theory for this fats, oils, and grease project, why we wanted to remove it. And this is in addition or besides the obvious reasons of why you'd want to remove a giant, gross fatberg clogging a 6-foot pipe that discharges to the harbor. And this is about bacteria, right? So we consider fats, oils, and grease to be a secondary source of bacteria. So this is in contrast to primary sources, which are those warm-blooded animals that may discharge fecal matter to the system, right? And so if you remember, we measure fecal indicator bacteria because it gives us an indicator of the presence of the feces of warm-blooded animals, which in turn tells us if there might be things like viruses or other pathogens that can make people sick. So secondary sources are a little different. Those are places like fats, oils, and grease, sediments, sands, soils that can harbor these bacteria, but not be directly related to those primary sources, right? Those animals. And really interestingly, they can also not be directly related to those pathogens that we're really interested in. So it can be a secondary source in that it can harbor these bacteria, but it's not the same, doesn't mean the same thing as those primary sources that can be associated with pathogens. So all that in mind, when we analyze water samples, when we collect water samples and bring them to the lab, we analyze them in two ways. One is looking for concentrations of those bacteria, right? So just counts per a given volume of water. And then the other thing we look at is called microbial source tracking, or MST. What this allows us to do is to do a DNA analysis of a water sample to answer the question of which animals are present in this sample. So we can look for specific markers, and that's what we've done in this project. We look for specific human markers and dog markers, and then the third marker we looked for is called universal MST marker, and this tells us two things. One, generally, are there other markers present in this sample that we didn't test for? And then really importantly here, and this is something that we've learned through reviewing the scientific literature, is that secondary sources such as fats, oils, and grease are areas that are associated with high counts of universal microbial source tracking. So I know this is that's a lot of technical information, but to break it all down, the two metrics for success for this project in terms of the data would be: one, lower bacterial counts following removal of the fats, oils, and grease, which we did not see, and I'm going to explain to you why that might be and what it means in a bit. And then the second metric for success is a decrease in universal MST markers following fog removal, which we did see. And I'm really excited to show you that data right now. So we collected samples from during high tide and low tide from the St. Augustine outfall before fog removal and after fog removal. And that's an image of the outfall in the top right-hand corner. And we also looked at some historical data just to analyze some longer term trends. And just the real big take-home messages here are really great news. We did not detect human associated DNA in the low tide samples, so from the stormwater outfall, just at high tide. And that tells us that we're not seeing evidence of human associated bacteria from the St. Augustine stormwater line, which is great news. And the other great piece of news that we saw is that we didn't detect dog associated bacteria at all. It's a small sample size, but those are both pretty encouraging results. And then finally, a decrease in universal MST. And if you look at this graph on the right, you can see 6 data points. It's low tide and high tide on 3 different sampling events. And those 2 big bars all the way to the left are before we remove the fats, oils, and grease. And you can see those universal MST numbers are up in the 6 million range, right? They're really large bars. And then moving to the right, after we removed fog, the numbers drop pretty dramatically. So to me, that tells us that our theory was correct, that deposit of fats, oils, and grease was an area associated with high microbial source universal MST. And when we removed that source, we took away that one of the sources of bacteria to this system. And then getting into the fecal indicator bacteria data, these 2 graphs show Enterococcus on the left and E. coli on the right. And these are just 2 different species of bacteria that we look for. And the black lines on both graphs represent when the fog was removed from the system. And you can see pre-fog removal, those bars all the way to the left, relatively small concentrations. And then we get to the right, we get this big spike on the low tide sample right afterward, and then it drops down a little bit more later. And this could be for many, many reasons. One kind of really simple example is just that there's a ton of variability in these bacteria data. And this is not, removing the fats, oils, and grease didn't really move the dial as we hoped it would. Another potential answer to this question is that the fats, oils, and grease actually acted as a kind of a fat dam, wherein really small amounts of water, low flows, were impeded by this deposit of fats, oils, and grease from flowing out and discharging. And when we removed that dam, that allowed small volumes of water to discharge unimpeded. And you can imagine that those are small volumes of water. They may have high concentrations of bacteria, so they're not diluted. And another option might be just that got a small amount of sediment in the sample that second sampling day, and that's what caused that big peak. And finally, if you can, I noticed that the pre-fog removal, we did the low tide sampling before the high tide sampling, and after fog removal, just because of the time of day, we did the high tide sampling first. So that big peak there might just be basically tidal water that had inundated the stormwater pipe flowing out again as the tide recedes. So all this to say is that the system is obviously very complex, and there are many sources that we still need to identify and eliminate. But I would say that the universal MST data tells us that we removed a source of bacteria from the system, and that had some impact, but we're just seeing a bunch of noise in the system from a lot of the other sources. So still work to be done, but the project itself was a success. And then getting into next steps, proposal for the next 2 years. I mentioned earlier that during our 2017-18 CCTV inspections, we identified 4 segments of pipe that will need a repair or replacement in the next 5 to 10 years, and we're approaching that 5-year timeline. And with the TMDL, I think it's a good time to jump on these. So I'd like to have another look at these and implement the appropriate repairs or replacements to these segments. And I apologize for the hand-drawn nature of this map, but I want to draw your attention to the bottom left outfall. So it's a segment that goes from DI3 to the outfall, and that's actually one of our first flush sites that we've been sampling for multiple years now. So in fixing that, we have a really nice long-term data set to show us the improvements being made and measure the success of that project. So I'm excited for that. And then there's 2 items here with asterisks on them, and those are just to indicate that we'll bring in funding from other organizations as well. So lining the Capistrano pipe is something we'd hoped to do we hoped the county would do last year, but due to COVID, it was postponed. So that's something that the county will fund, but we'd like to use some Harbor District resources to monitor the results of that project. These will be funded by non-Harbor District funding to help watershed residents and businesses with manure management and stormwater practices. And these are things that, while they won't be funded by the Harbor District, will certainly have water quality improvements that will benefit the harbor. And then we'd like to identify water treatment and filtration options to control sources of bacteria and recommend some new best management practices for things like dumpsters and trash cans. And then we'd like to continue to engage in the TMDL and assist with Harbor District's compliance and engagement. We'd like to develop a new partnership with SAM and GCSD and San Mateo County Office of Sustainability to work together to seek new funding sources and apply for grants. And then we'd like to help in some of the compliance recommendations from the TMDL, including evaluating your sewage collection systems, inspecting sewer and stormwater laterals, and work on some actions to control runoff from places like loading docks and dumpsters. And then I'll talk about this in a little bit, but look for new funding to what the TMDL calls special studies. And this is just their way of addressing some of the kind of lingering research questions, some of the things we still don't fully understand about where bacteria comes from in the system. And then we'd like to continue our education and outreach efforts, including our pet waste program. The San Mateo County Office of Sustainability is currently pursuing a partnership with several of the implementing parties in the TMDL, the Pillar Point Harbor and Venice Beach TMDL, as well as the San Vicente Water Quality Improvement Plan watershed and some other watersheds that have impaired water bodies, and to pool resources and maximize reach for a pet waste outreach program. And we hope the Harbor District we'll consider participating in that. We'd like to implement our storm drain art program, apply for a grant to do that project, and conduct our annual First Flush program, which will have some funding from the Harbor District as well as other organizations. And then some general outreach to businesses and about washing and dumping into storm drains. And then the signage project that I mentioned earlier, as some of you I'm sure are aware, the little blue sign above the Capistrano outfall was defaced quite some time ago with some graffiti, and we've been trying to get the county to go ahead and clean that up. And I had another meeting with the county this last week about that, and went down and visited and sent them some new photos. So we hope that they'll get moving on that soon. And then working on this general signage issue, we want to bring this to our communications consultant to get some good language for some signs that we can put up generally around Harbor District property, letting people know that sometimes this water is not safe for swimming. And then general communications and technical assistance. We really want to be on call to help with emerging water quality issues as they come up, help the Harbor District out in any way we can, and help out social media, and to continue to look for and to understand sources of pollution and to address them. And these are some of the topics we wanted to look at in special studies. So again, these are things we were going to look at in this last year, but decided to wait until we found exactly how the TMDL was going to address them. We found that they addressed them in what they call special studies, and we realized this is just an opportunity to diversify funding sources and find some new opportunities so that we can share some of the responsibility between the Harbor District and other organizations. And you might remember this slide from last year's presentation. It was included just to show how we've leveraged initial investments from the Harbor District to bring in funding from other sources as well. And this is really here to show that we see that return on investment growing in the future, and the investment we hope from the Harbor District shrinking a little bit as so many other organizations and entities are taking part and sharing the responsibility in reducing sources of pollution to the harbor and to Venice Beach. And I do want to thank the Harbor District for years of being very, very proactive in addressing water quality concerns. I think because of the Harbor District, the investment from the Harbor District we've been able to understand a lot more about where sources of bacteria are coming from and to address them. And then the budget for the next 2 years, as Jim mentioned, we were able to complete our scope of work for fiscal year 21 with about $60,000 under budget, happy to say. And the next year's budget, we proposed $70,000 really to do a lot of the planning phases for some of those South Water storm system repairs. I mentioned those pipe repairs, replacements, and inspections, and some of those TMDL implementation actions, pursuing partnerships, pursuing funding for special studies, identifying treatment and filtration options, education outreach and signage, and recommending BMPs. And then in fiscal year 23, we hope to be in the implementation phase for many of those projects mentioned above. And the suggested budget for both those years is $170,000. And that is my presentation. So open it up for questions.
Thank you, Noah. Let me just, before we have commissioner comments and discussion, let me just open this up to public comment. I don't see any hands raised, but if you would like to comment on this item, this is your time to do so. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Oh, yes, I do. TJ Gauthier.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
You are, thank you.
Good. Just want to thank the Harbor District Commissioners and staff for the long-term partnership that we've had working on these water quality issues, and that it's been very helpful, as Noah has pointed out, to be able to do this on a long-term basis, to continue to sample in the same places and do it over time and figure out what we can do about it. We'd all like to get rid of the signs. We'd all love to have that long-term goal of being able to complete the water quality improvements, and we'll keep working on it. It's not clear if it's possible given the sources from upstream that flow into the harbor, but I think what we're doing is continuing to make progress, and we look forward to continuing to work together and all be able to enjoy the harbor even more as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, TJ. Any other public comment? Okay, don't see any more hands raised. So I will close public comment and open this item up for discussion by the commissioners.
Yeah, I guess I can start. I just want to thank the Resource Conservation District for the presentation. It seemed very well presented and thought out. And even though this doesn't present a lot of clear answers, perhaps it's a good step in the right direction. So I'm in favor of keeping moving forward on this.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Let's see, one of the questions that Noah may be able to answer, and I have some that he might not be able to. So is the heavy metal testing parameters today the same as it was in 2003? What are the heavy metals and where might they be from? And then a question I had, I don't know if this would be for the Resource Conservation District or more for the Harbor District or more for the county. On the fats, oils, and greases, have we addressed tenant exposure and cost sharing? We are an enterprise district, and who pays for these different little things? And then I'm wondering, with all the complex maps we've got, are those tenants of the Harbor District? Is that other restaurant facilities in the immediate Princeton area? I'm curious if we've studied that so that we could actually say, where did those come from and who's responsible?
So to address your first question, I'm not 100% sure what the sampling protocol was back in 2003, but I can look into that and get back to you. But the metals that we test for are copper, lead, and zinc. And I know that we have been testing for those pretty consistently, but I'm not sure if the methods have changed since that time. And as for where they might be coming from, heavy metals can come from things like brake dust from cars. So when you tap on your brakes, that can leave little metal fragments. They can come from decaying infrastructure, so old. I mean, these are examples, not Princeton specific, but things like, corrugated metal roofs or aging metal pipes and that kind of thing. And certain industries can certainly leach metals into the environment. It is really interesting to see that this year, and that we haven't never seen it before. That's why I'm really curious I want to keep an eye on it in the future. And that could have been a one-off issue and not related to a long time source. Thank you, Kellex. Yeah, architectural fixtures, light industry, car brakes, etc. As for your second question about cost sharing for the fats, oils, and grease, I don't think I'm the best person to answer that specifically. And as for sources of fats, oils, and grease, we did find a drain that was capped a little ineffectively, that was then replaced a couple of years ago, and then found that cap was still not functioning at 100%. And so we worked with that tenant to find a new or long-term solution. Yeah, I feel like there's one more question that I couldn't quite jot down on my list here, Tom.
No, I think you got it, but it's like, is it a tenant in the harbor or was it just a tenant within the Princeton footprint?
Oh, it was in the harbor.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I can just add to that drain into the storm drain, it was plugged. The plug failed over time. The new permanent plug that's put in there is a lot more permanent and a lot more substantial. And plus, there's a pump now to keep that area pumped out and into the sewage system where it belongs. As opposed to with respect to the cost sharing, the fat, oil, and grease buildup in St. Augustine line is a result of over decades of stuff being dumped into the sewer system, not just recent activities. So it'd be very difficult to pinpoint one, where it came from, two, who would be responsible once we do identify where it comes from. So the best option for the Harbor District, and I think the board made the correct decision, was to clean it out and get it back to a clean state, and then we'll maintain it that way.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Wiring, do you have any questions?
I agree with what Jim just said about it being the right decision to just clean it out and move forward. But in the last couple of years on the board, and Noah and Kellex, we're grateful for your research and for our partnership. I'm really trying to not lose my voice. Sorry, I've got a cold. We have indeed been very proactive about water quality concerns. And in fact, we've been footing the lion's share of the bill for research that I think extends beyond our properties. This may just be me, but I'm not clear on what proposed future work we're looking at that might be supported by the county or other agencies when you talk about diversifying responsibility. Noah, could you describe what RCD considers specific harbor district issues and what are not?
Can I actually field this one first, Noah? So, so first, Nancy, just to clarify, the initial work was well over $1 million that was funded by the state that came to the Harbor District. So remember, that's how the work started. And then the Harbor District has made some pretty significant investments since then, and it sort of expanded and contracted. So there was a period of time when the Harbor District really wanted to have a better understanding of like where the areas of responsibility were, and that involved going outside of Harbor District property to understand what the inputs were that were coming from other places. And so that was very valuable. So the Harbor District made investments to understand what wasn't Harbor District responsibility. And then there was some contraction saying, okay, now that we have a sense of that, and to be clear, one of the things that we've found over these years is that much of the chronic bacterial impairments at the harbor do not come from the harbor, right? That the harbor is the receptacle of the sins of the watershed, essentially. And so then we went through a period where we were directed by the Harbor District that what would be supportive to you all was to focus just on the lands that you own and manage. And so that's where we have been focusing in our recent agreements with you, on your storm, where the storm lines that maybe had inputs from your tenants, some of the technical assistance in the past that had to do with the boats in the harbor, or some of your infrastructure, that sort of thing, installing that manhole cover so that there could be clean out, et cetera. Then we continue to work with the county, with the sanitary, the community services district, with private landowners upstream, et cetera, with the Regional Water Quality Control Board. And one of the areas where we can bring value is connecting some of those dots too, since we're sort of in the room for a lot of these different conversations. When, when the county had to pay for some water quality monitoring as part of another obligation, we could say, hey, would you bring that resource here to help us characterize what's going on in this watershed? Or when we partnered with the county on various grants, we could make sure that some of those grants, for example, enabled us to do like pet waste outreach in the watersheds that drain into the harbor, and that sort of thing, stitching together these different funding sources. So just wanted to know, I'm sure that you have more to add to that, but I wanted to contextualize a little bit of the history and how we have used these contributions. And the folks who have made contributions are the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, which exists in partnership with the RCD in our local partnership office in Half Moon Bay. San Mateo County, what formerly known as Granada Sanitary District, was one of the early investors in the First Flush program, and continued and also sent volunteers. The Regional Water Quality Control Board, and a few others. Noah, do you want to answer that as well?
Thank you, Kellex. I think you covered it pretty generally. I would just say really specifically some of those works that I proposed next year, those Some of them are requirements of the total maximum daily load. For the harbor district, those are implementing actions. And then in terms of those 4 segments of pipe that are approaching time for reinspection, potential repair, replacement, those are things on harbor district property that are not, really not the responsibility of other organizations. So yeah, when we talk about, I feel like Alex said the rest, just that there are also specific actions that are very much the responsibility of the harbor.
So before we go on, we might need to do another 15-minute or another extension out to 4:45. I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting out to 4:45. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Muted.
A roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Reiring,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
President Shane Crawley.
Aye. So that motion carries.
So
I'm sorry, Noah, if you have any other comments, I do have a question.
Commissioner Raring was talking. I don't know if you saw that. She was on mute before.
yeah, sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Reiring.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Noah. So yeah, I still have questions. So the implementation phase for 23, it looks like that implementation phase is that just looking at our facilities? That is, okay, great.
No capital works projects. I'm not planning on doing any capital works projects with Harbor District funding that's not directly on Harbor District property, as requested.
All right. So when you're talking about partnerships for outreach, and these would be communities, ostensibly up in the hills or farther afield from our harbor, are those the kinds of things that you proactively look for? Look to diversify the responsibility, the fiscal responsibility for things like that. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get is,
yes, and we've been successful.
Are we keeping the scope very narrow now, really, to our own properties that are impacting our water quality?
And can I just add on to that, especially in light of the fact that your sphere of influence is increasing? How would that affect what Commissioner Reiring is asking about?
I think that the way that RCDs exist in statute, we can work outside of our boundaries, and we do. So this work, I don't see being affected by any boundary alignment or closing our sort of donut holes. So then the shortest answer, I think, to this is what we're proposing to you is what we understand for you to need. We exist in support of landowners and resource managers. And so we don't have a particular objective other than supporting you in your natural resource management. So what we've proposed is what we understand to be what your needs are right now. And if there's anything about that you want to change or feel like that's not the case, we'd be really interested and open to changing or that evolving. But our understanding has been that that you would like your resources going to manage the things that are your responsibility. That's been the most recent sort of evolution of this work. And that's different from what it was before. And so we've evolved with what is of service to you. Yes. And B, also that you're going to have new compliance issues with the TMDL, with which we're familiar. So the scope of work that NOAA has crafted is based on those two assumptions.
That's great, thank you. Because we did spend a lot of time in our committee meeting talking about this, and I just wanted the whole board to hear it. And just a couple of other things. Any update on the Capistrano outfall signage?
Yeah, I had another meeting with John Allen, my contact at Office of Sustainability, and brought it up, and I went and took some new photos of the sign, just in case it was fixed without my knowledge. Still needs to be cleaned up, and he sent some more emails and made some more phone calls. So I'm waiting to hear back on that. So there's been some progress made, but nothing.
Great, thank you. And no, one other thing that we talked about in our committee meeting was a new slide. I think Kellex proposed a new slide for public presentations, which will help inform the public that our properties are a very small part of Princeton, and it's not our properties that are causing this widespread water quality problem. Because as you know, it's a big PR problem for us that we even have candidates run on this issue, as if we control all of the San Mateo County coastline.
So Noah, that was the missing slide. So Noah and I were racking our brains about what the slide was. so I will, we didn't have that slide. We will have that, or some statement to that effect in future presentations. And I'll say it again on record that the chronic sources of bacteria at Capistrano Beach in particular, which drove a lot of this work, have not been found to be from the harbor.
Great. So I'd like to piggyback on that. Thanks so much for that clarification and that pretty solid statement, Kellex. I appreciate that. But I have to agree with Commissioner Reiering about those concerns, because it's so easy, given some of the turmoil we've had for the last 6 years, to blame the harbor district, where we're the stepchild of everyone, and we're the agency that's easy to beat up or whatever, and it's not a good reflection on the district, but even more importantly on our tenants too, who are trying to be as careful as possible, right? And so anything that we can do to bring kind of more light on the actual facts rather than the spin that people want to use against the harbor district, I think is going to be important, number one. And number two, I think it's important because the harbor district does play an important role in terms of balancing the nexus between economic development and environmental protection, as we have seen with things like our West Trail project and Living Shoreline and our support of the Bay Delta Plan. I know that was not a popular decision, but we do have a commercial fishing industry, that we need to help support. And so I think that in light of just the local economic condition and the recovery efforts that we're trying to make on the coast, I actually am on the Coastal Recovery Initiative team working with the other stakeholders. I think it's important that the harbor district be viewed in a light that's not a false light.
If I may speak to that for a moment, Commissioner Zemke, earlier you made a comment, something along the lines of, well, we don't have a smoking gun, basically, but we're moving forward. And I think that one of the big challenges for us in our water quality program, more than any of our other programs at the RCD, is that the messages are much more nuanced, and the science is very complex. And so, if you find, for example, evidence of dog waste, then there will be a headline somewhere that says it's dogs. Well, it's not dogs at the beaches, it's dogs in the watershed. And even then, that's not necessarily like the primary source of bacteria. And yes, we should clean up dog waste. And if we do, there will still be exceedances of bacteria. So the fact that these are complex dynamics and complex watersheds, that some of the bacteria might be from wildlife, that is not going to be maybe addressed, or that sometimes it's not that there's a really huge source of bacteria, but that there's conditions in which they grow, secondary sources of bacteria, and that different things are happening in different places and seasonally, and that it keeps changing. It's complicated. And typically people don't want to hear that it's complicated. They want to blame somebody and they want to know something's being done. And,
right.
And so one of the things that I would ask of you all actually is to help us socialize this concept that when it comes to bacteria on the coast, it's complicated. And that if we can spend less time blaming other people and everybody take responsibility for what we can do in our backyards, in our businesses, at our harbor, in our uplands, it's going to make a big difference. I think one of the biggest accomplishments of the work that we've done together over the last X number of years, I've been working on this with the Harbor District since I think 2008, is what we have ruled out as smoking guns. When I started working on this, you know, there were people who were in camp. Some were like, it's the birds on the jetties. It's the wildlife in the harbor. It's the boats in the harbor. And then we did modeling and found that if all of the boats in the harbor released their waste at the same time, it would not, with the way it circulates, it would not cause the high counts of bacteria we were seeing at Capistrano Beach. Like it's not even physically possible. So, so like the things that we have ruled out over the years are actually very significant. So I won't go on and on about this, but just to say that science often, it is a big deal. It's an accomplishment when you rule something out. That's what hypothesis testing is. You rule something out more than you rule something in. So if you guys can help us with that messaging with the community at large, I would be really grateful.
I think that's exactly what we're trying to get to here, is that somehow that message, in spite of the amount of effort, time, effort, and money we've put into investigating these problems, that message has not gotten out to the community at all. And we are really, I think really now with this, in the last couple of years, that's something we've really wanted to work on. And it's why I've proposed a water quality roundtable and hope to get other agencies involved in really talking about it so that there will be more scuttlebutt. You know, we can definitely do our part, but we have to be careful too, so that it at this point, things that we say might look like we're trying to get ourselves off the hook, because there is not the widespread understanding that we're not at fault. So I understand what you're saying.
Okay, any other comments?
I just have one more. I have one more question, and this is for Jim. And this came up at our committee meeting, but Jim, will you be able to look into how much other harbors spend on water quality mitigation issues for us?
Yes, I can do that. It's a complex question because there's different aspects in the definition, but I'm on that now, and I can provide that number to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thanks, Kellex and Noah.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments, or is there a motion? I'll entertain a motion.
I need to see it so that I can say it wrong. I recommend that these are, I'm sorry, these
motion.
Can you do this?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I'll move that to take the recommendation of the Water Quality Ad Hoc Committee
it's hard, right?
Well, no, well, and I mean, because we've received the updated presentation, but to move forward with a proposal for a not to exceed amount of $170,000 for fiscal year 2021, 2022, and 2022 to 2023 to fund the San Mateo Resource Conservation District for continued support and work associated with water quality projects, coordination with respect to TMDL regulations, education and outreach, technical assistance, and identification of unknown sources of contaminants.
I'll second that.
Okay. Did you get that, Melanie? I made the motion and Commissioner Zemke seconded it.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Any further discussion? We just had a great discussion on this. If not, then why don't we do a roll call?
Commissioner Mateo?
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke?
Aye.
President Chang Trolley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That motion carries. And now we are at near the end, close to the end of our agenda. Commissioner comments. Any commissioner can make a public comment for up to 2 minutes. Why don't we do, we're at 4:40. Why don't we just extend our meeting to 5? Is there a motion? I'll make that motion to extend our meeting to 5 p.m. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, quick roll call, please, Melanie.
Commissioner Zemke,
Aye.
President Chang Trolley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush.
Aye.
That motion carries. So commissioner comments. Commissioner Mathush, do you want to start with your comments?
Department of Fish and Wildlife is closing Dungeness crab June 1st. It's kind of sad because the prices have been abnormally high for the fishermen that still have pots in the water. You go to Ranch 99, which is usually an inexpensive place to shop. It's $20 a pound, which means an individual Dungeness crab is $35 to $45. We recently discussed the drought and some of the effect that it's having, and it's still having a terrible effect for salmon in the various rivers. And there's still the big, huge problem of balancing water needs for agriculture. And I do have an idea to contribute a little bit when we come up with future agenda items.
Thank you. Commissioner Zemke?
Yeah, I just want to say a big vote of thanks to Jim and his staff for pushing the issues on planning and the safety plan for Johnson Pier and other items. I know it's been a real struggle, and I really do appreciate his initiative with that. Also too, and I don't know if this would fall under agenda items or not, but at some point, I guess we're going to be talking about moving back to in-person meetings. And I would also like to include in that kind of the logistics of how we do that. I think we've all gotten very used to the convenience of remote meetings and the ease at which people can comment in those meetings. And once we move back, I think we need to take a fresh look at the timing of our meetings to make sure that we're providing the same efficiency as far as ability for public comments.
So, oh, Bill, so Jim and I have started discussing that as
Okay.
we continue to transition. So we're trying to figure out the plan right now, which, I mean, and it's nothing, that's not anything that's secretive, but just as we kind of go through the recovery phase, and the meeting phase. I mean, there's obviously a benefit, right, to having some Zoom meetings. We've had very high participation than normally and for our meetings in person. So we're trying to figure out the best way to keep that
Right.
participation level while also, meeting in person, and we'll figure that out at some
Great.
point.
Thanks, Virginia.
Thanks, Commissioner Ryring.
Nothing to report.
Okay, so I have just a quick thing to say. Jim, thank you so much for allowing me to come to visit with you when we hosted Sea Valor, or when you hosted Sea Valor. I'm glad that we were able to accommodate them and put them on our agenda today. I think it's going to be a great service for, safety, public safety on the coast side, and hopefully the beginning of, something more and in a more collaborative effort as well with all of the public response or emergency response agencies. Also, I just wanted to say that at the last Coastal Commission meeting last Friday, I made public comment in support of the Coastal Commission's staff report to kind of move forward with fixing the Miramar Bridge as an infrastructure problem, since that is literally a bridge that connects all of the coastal communities. And so that actually passed the Coastal Commission unanimously. So, that's a good thing for the coast side at this point. But that's pretty much all that I have. Thank you for all of your hard work, Jim, and staff too, Melanie and Julie, you especially. I know that you're also in the middle of working on our debt policy, and I'm looking forward to scheduling the ad hoc committee meeting for the revenue and Income Ad Hoc Committee. We are now on future agenda items. Any future agenda item?
Yes, if I could, am I on mute or not? Okay.
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
So we had a discussion that was off of our agenda today on parking issues. And while I'm not saying that we could put something together as close for June, it might be something to look at what the tenants want. I'd also be interested in having some sort of a tickle file or follow-up on bringing RVs back to our harbor, and also entertaining whether we could go so far as to have a few the plumbed sites. And there's a grant program for freshwater recovery. And I believe that General Manager Pruitt has talked to somebody who's ever the head of SAM now, but there's a clean water program funded by grants. We look over by the West Trail, there's a possibility there of recovering water that we could be sending fresh water down into that little lagoon that supports mainly birds. I don't know what other little animals might live there, but it wouldn't be an agenda item for June, probably even July, but I would like to get some information on this grant program and tying it together with SAM or whoever else. I don't know if it'd be SAM, Montera, Granada Community Sanitary, or whatever they call themselves now, GCSD, and find out how we can preserve some of the fresh water that's running off.
So if I hear you correctly, it sounds like there are 3 different items that you would like us to consider to put on a future agenda. Is that correct, Commissioner Mateusz? One
Yes.
would be the parking.
Yes.
So, okay, if you would like to have these items on a future agenda, then we need to vote on those. So why don't we take each one individually and vote on those? So your first item would be parking, right? Can you just name that more specifically?
No, I don't have a problem with the parking the way it is, but it sounded like a lot of our tenants did. And if we want to address that, fine. And if we want to just wait for that item to ripen on the tree and get more background, I'm fine with that. But I don't understand what the tenants were saying and what all they want. So,
Okay, so my suggestion is that I think some of that came out on some of those issues came out during the 2 items that you recused yourself from. So I'm sure that'll come out as we discuss those items in the Revenue and Income Ad Hoc Committee meeting. So why don't we let it, kind of sit there for a while?
okay, that's fine.
Your second item?
The update on bringing RVs back to the harbor, and along with that, making full hookups for the RVs. And say we only got 20 spaces with full hookups, maybe 30, but just the idea of the amount of infrastructure and detail that's needed, that could be an absolute phenomenal revenue source for the harbor district.
So do you think that could go into the Revenue and Income Committee meeting, Ad Hoc Committee as well?
I don't think that it would need to, if that's what you'd like. To me, someone somehow blocked us from having RVs. Now there's a permitting process. We've got to look at that. There's also infrastructure required for full hookups. There's buildings, bathrooms. There's a lot of rules. So at some point, I'd like to figure out how do we start looking at the red tape, the green tape, and the purple tape to make this happen.
Okay, so Jim, I'm happy to put that on a future agenda if that makes sense. Or what do you think? We're looking at this as a revenue generator. Maybe it's something that we need to have a more robust discussion with the full board. And Jim, what do you think, or do you think it could go into the Revenue and Income Committee, Ad Hoc Committee?
President Chan Crowley, the commission Harbor Commission, based on the NOV, voted to close down the RV lot and to reconsider reestablishing it at a future date. So that's
Yes.
been approved to reconsider at a future date. And we've got some input already, and we can put together a staff report for the board to consider on reestablishing an RV park in the sea lot of Pillar Point Harbor.
Okay, so why don't we, is there a motion? Well, so Tom, why don't you make a motion to put this on to a future agenda to be determined by the general manager?
I move that we re-examine this, get a staff report, and push this forward and let the general manager handle it in the best way that he sees fit and enlighten the board.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? Commissioner Ryring?
No, I'm good. I'm just not, I'm speaking
Okay.
with my mute on all evening, all day.
No question, no problem. So let's do a roll call, please, Melanie, on this motion for a
President
future
Crawley?
agenda item.
President Shane Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Ryring,
Aye.
oh, Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Zemke.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. So we'll look forward to that on a future agenda. Jim, so your last future agenda item, Tom?
There's a building over by the West Trail somewhere that has something to do with water. And I wanted to see if we could start a discussion with Sam. And I don't know if that would include Montera and the Granada group and do this water purification. A lot of this is based on a grant so that we wouldn't have to pay for it. I'd be looking for major grant money, but not only would we get the grant to complete this infrastructure, we'd be sending fresh water into that lagoon where it currently goes anyway. So I'd like to see that we start digging into this process and seeing what we need to do. We've got a grant group, got a lot going on, but it's not something I'd enter into unless we had alternative funding sources.
Yes, so I'm familiar with the project that you're talking about, and it's basically, it sounds like it's the water filtration system that would, pump in the water that's not polluted, I guess, unpolluted water into the harbor. And so I think that the general manager is working on that item, right, or that issue right now with the general manager of SAM. So thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Matoush. So why don't we let that kind of let that take its course in its natural way, as I believe that the two general managers are working on that issue right now, and then have the general manager bring this back to us when he's ready to do so. Would that work? I mean, it's definitely being looked at right now. I think that, aren't y'all meeting, Jim, the two of you? Want to just give a quick update? It might even be, I think it's in your, you mentioned it even in your little report.
Yeah, I've already met once with the general manager of SAM to discuss this. Our next step is to get a larger group together, and we have a scheduled meeting. I think it's the second week of June to delve into this deeper, to see how we can develop partnerships, not only with the Harbor District and SAM, but all agencies involved to get the biggest benefit out of moving forward with this project. Once that meeting comes together and we have some more information, I plan on bringing an informational paper to the board to get further direction.
So are you okay with that, Commissioner
Despite that
Matoush?
excellent progress, I would say motion to adjourn.
Okay, wait. So wait, can we, are you okay with what
Yes.
Jim
I
said?
said, despite of that excellent progress.
It's not going to be forgotten because it is in
I
motion right now.
understand fully.
Okay, so motion to adjourn?
Any other commissioner comments? Only Tom spoke.
Oh, yeah, right.
Agenda items.
Commissioner Zemke,
No, I have no comments.
Commissioner Ryring. You're on mute, Commissioner Ryring. It's been a long
No
afternoon.
comments. I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Waring,
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Zemke,
Aye.
President Shane Crowley.
Aye. So the meeting is adjourned at 4:55. 5 minutes to spare. Thank y'all for a great meeting.